Chapter 797. Xiao Yanru was basically useless unless she could get his father's favor. But Chu Luiyue felt that this possibility was almost impossible. There were many daughters of lineal descent in Duke Xing's mansion. Among the several daughters, only one was a daughter of a concubine. If Xiao Yanru was absent, there were others. If Chu Luiyue wanted the power of Duke Xing's mansion, it could be someone else. Xiao Wanru was not the biological daughter of Xiao Jing of Duke Xing. But if Xiao Jing, who had lost his biological daughter, wanted to support his niece, Xiao Wanru was the best choice. Xiao Wanru, who had Ru and great elder princess behind her, was even more valuable than Xiao Yanru before. After thinking about this, Chu Luiyue felt that he could not wait any longer. If he waited any longer, more people would find that Xiao Wanru's value was not what it used to be. He had to do it before others. He went to see Xiao Wanru with the excuse of Xiao Yanru's matter. Unexpectedly, he was disturbed by Chu Luchen, which also made Chu Luiyue feel a little crisis. He did not feel too disappointed after losing Xiao Yanru. Instead, he even felt relaxed. Now for the sake of Duke Xing's mansion, he could not lose Xiao Wanru again. This feeling was very urgent. Imperial Mother, how did Imperial Father choose the beauties of Chuxiu Palace? Chu Luiyue raised his eyes, looked at the Empress, who was a little thirsty, and asked, as if he did not hear the Empress's sarcasm to him just now. Seeing him so calm, the Empress changed her mind and immediately calmed down. She had gone a little too far just now. The reason why she lost her composure was also because of Xiao Yanru before. Prince Yu, do you mean that you have a crush on someone? The Empress put down the teacup in her hand and asked with a smile. She looked calm and composed, which was very like the Empress. I do have a crush on a Mississippi. I hope you can help me. Chu Luiyue stood up, lifted the hem of his robe, and knelt down in front of the Empress. Which miss do you have a crush on? The Empress said in surprise. She really did not expect that Chu Luiyue would be so direct and beg her. Shouldn't he beg the Emperor now? But thinking of what happened to the Emperor, she knew that the Emperor should not be in the mood to grant a marriage to his son, so she understood Chu Luiyue's mentality. He really liked a miss and was afraid that someone would snatch her away, so he begged her. She couldn't help feeling a little proud. No matter what, a son of a concubine was still a son of a concubine, even if he was a prince. At this time, he had to beg her instead of concubine-da. Tell me, which one do you like? If it's suitable, I'll make the decision for you. The Empress gave Chu Luiyue a hand. As long as it was not the one she liked, it did not matter. It was not difficult for her to give Chu Luiyue a marriage after expressing her goodwill. Moreover, the daughter-in-law she liked was not on the list of the draft, so she was not afraid that Chu Luiyue would like the one she chose. Mother, in fact, I don't have to marry anyone. It's just that there are constant disputes in the backyard. I want to marry someone who is more powerful and can help me suppress those people in the backyard. Chu Luiyue smiled bitterly and said helplessly, Something more powerful? Which family do you want? The Empress thought a little. If it was something more powerful, it meant that the family of the bride's family was not small. She secretly thought that the beauties in this circle were not small, so she was a little wary of Chu Luiyue's excuse. There were indeed many women in the backyard of Prince Yu's mansion, but most of them were nameless and couldn't make any trouble. Women with low status dared not to make trouble. In fact, the Empress really didn't like the peace in Chu Luiyue's backyard, and she didn't want the family of the Princess Chu Luiyue married to be too powerful, which would affect her son. Mother! Chu Luiyue smiled slightly and was about to speak frankly. He knew the Empress's mind well. At this time, speaking frankly would be more effective than beating around the bush. Chu Liuzhou must not want to ask Xiao Wanru for his wife, or he hadn't figured out the benefits of Xiao Wanru. The candidate of Princess Zhou decided by the Empress was in conflict with Xiao Wanru. Reporting to the Empress, Prince Qin is here. A eunuch hurried in and reported in a shrill voice. The voice interrupted Chu Liuyue's words. At this time, it was inconvenient for him to speak first. He inexplicably had a bad feeling. When he was talking with Xiao Wanru, Chu Luchen appeared. Now when he was talking with the Empress, Chu Luchen actually appeared again. He appeared. Summon Prince Qin to the hall. The Empress said. Chu Luchen appeared in the hall, walked over slowly, and lazily bowed to the Empress. The Empress politely invited him to take a seat. What a coincidence! Brother is also here. Chu Luchun smiled and raised his eyebrows, with a trace of a smile in his handsome eyes. Third brother, it's really a coincidence. I met you before, and now I meet you again. Are you helping father to deal with the matter? Chu Luwe was annoyed, but he had to show a smile on his face. He had always been cold, and it was rare to see such a smile. Your Majesty, what did you ask Prince Qin to do? The Empress sensed something and turned to Chu Luchun to ask. Chu Luchun sat down in a chair on one side, raised the corner of his eyes, and said with a trace of evil coldness, "It's not a big deal. I just went to see where Xiao Baolin lives and if he needs anything." The Empress's heart skipped a beat, and she asked subconsciously, "Your Majesty, what do you mean? Did he want to call Xiao Yanru back?" "Uncle, I don't mean anything. I just want to find out the truth and tell Marquis Xing about it." Speaking of this, Marquis Xing is also guilty of not being strict in discipline. Let's make it clear so that Marquis Xing won't feel wronged. Chu Luchun said casually. He did have the most say in Xiao Yanru's matter, and it had nothing to do with Xiao Yanru in any way. The others, whether Chu Luiwe or Chu Liuzhou, or even Chu Liuxin, who was still in contact with today's matter, had more or less something to do with it. From this point of view, he was indeed the most suitable person to investigate Xiao Yanru. The corner of the Empress's eyes twitched, and her eyelids twitched a few times. She clasped her hands hard in front of her, put on a dignified look, and said, "Duke Xing is indeed responsible for what happened to Xiao Baolin." In the past, the Empress had always protected Duke Xing's mansion, and this was the first time that she had reprimanded Duke Xing's mansion in front of others. "You're right, Empress, and I agree with you." Chu Luchun nodded and turned to Chu Luiwe, who was sitting silently aside, and said, "Big brother, did you come to the Empress for Xiao Baolin's matter?" Chu Liuyue's face became colder. He didn't want to have anything to do with Xiao Yanru at all now. He looked at Chu Luchun coldly and controlled his emotions after a long while. "Xiao Baolin's matter has nothing to do with me. That's my mistake. I thought you came to plead for Xiao Baolin." Chu Luchun said indifferently. Chu Liuyue's face was a little red, and he felt disgusted. This invalid was really haunting him. He actually came to the Empress to meet him again. Even if he was full of worries now, it was not the right time to say it. "Third brother, Xiao Baolin's current identity is not something we can casually talk about." Chu Luiwe reminded Chu Luchun coldly. "Big brother, you're right. Xiao Baolin's current status is different from ours, and we can't casually talk about him. But my father asked me to check it out, so I said something unreasonable just now." Chu Luchun nodded and explained, as if he didn't know that he had angered Chu Luiwe. Chu Luiwe almost couldn't control the evil fire in his heart. When the Empress said it just now, he could bear it. But now when Chu Luchun said the same words, he only felt strong disgust, not only for Chu Luchun, but also for Xiao Yanru. This woman was really disgusting and shameful. How could there be such a disgusting woman in the world? She not only dragged him, but also dragged his second brother. Now she even dragged his fourth brother into his father's arms. Although he didn't know the details of what happened in Fengyi Palace, he still heard some news. Now Xiao Yanru only had a Baolin title. He also knew that Xiao Yanru had schemed it and was discovered by the Empress. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been thrown into a corner far away. "Mother, I have something to do, so I won't disturb you anymore. I'll come to pay my respects to you tomorrow." Chu Luchun was so disgusted that he couldn't sit still. He stood up. He had no chance to speak in Chu Liuchun's presence, so he simply waited until tomorrow. He was afraid that he couldn't control his emotions if he stayed here any longer. The Empress understood what he meant and knew that he would talk about it tomorrow. She nodded at once. She was not anxious about Prince Yu's marriage. No matter who he liked, it had little to do with her. After saying goodbye to Chu Luchun, Chu Liue swung his sleeves and strode away, as if he really had something urgent to do. Seeing Chu Liue leave, Chu Luchun picked up the teacup in a good mood and took another sip. Then he slowly put it down and asked the Empress with a smile, "Big brother came in a hurry. Does he have something important to tell the Empress? Why don't he want to tell me when he sees me?" Your big brother likes a beauty and wants me to appoint her. The Empress replied with a smile. She didn't want to hide Chu Liuyue's matter. You've taken a fancy to a beauty? I wonder which family she's from? Chu Liuchen's smile became more and more gentle, as if he really just asked casually. Only Xiao Xuanzi shrank back and clearly sensed the gloomy atmosphere of his master. It was obvious that his master had been provoked, otherwise he would not have stabbed Prince Yu like that. I don't know who he was going to say. When he was about to say it, Prince Qin came. The Empress explained appropriately. She didn't want to worry about it. She had thought about it just now and found that basically, there was no conflict with the person she liked. Among these beauties, she was the concubine of Prince Zhou's mansion, so she couldn't be the legal wife of Prince Yu. That's a coincidence. I also like a Mississippi. I don't know if the one you like will marry me again. Chu Luchen smiled and raised his eyes. As soon as he said that, the Empress's face darkened and she thought of Xiao Yanru. Xiao Yanru was originally the person the Empress liked, but she disappeared because of the entanglement between her and Chu Liyue. Now thinking of it, Chu Liyue was really suspected of snatching her away. Or even if he didn't directly snatch her away, she felt that he had disturbed her happy event. Who do you like, Prince Chen? Tell me, and I will ask the Emperor to decree the marriage for Prince Chen. The Empress straightened her face and said kindly. Chapter 798. Thank you for your kindness, Your Majesty. Imperial Grandmother has already drafted the decree, and it is about to be sent out. Chu Luchen said with a smile. The Empress Dowager had even drafted the decree? After being stunned for a while, the Empress immediately asked, which family's daughter is it? She couldn't help feeling a little scared. If Chu Liyue had also asked for the daughter of this family, the Empress Dowager would definitely be angry if she gave the decree, and the Emperor would not spare her. Cold sweat suddenly appeared on her back. Did she almost fall into Chu Liyue's trap just now? No wonder Chu Liyue didn't ask the Emperor for the marriage but came to her. The Empress's face became cold, and there was anger in her eyes. If she really gave the decree in advance, she would definitely not be able to explain it to the Empress Dowager and the Emperor. Chu Liuchen's current intention was satisfactory, otherwise he would have jumped up to object. Chu Liyue was not as courteous as her son. If he didn't like her, he would make a scene. Therefore he really liked her. If she gave the person he liked to Chu Liyue, the Empress could almost foresee her future situation. Not only was there cold sweat on her back, but also on her forehead. She clenched the handkerchief in her hand with her fingers convulsively. The fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion has been taking care of Xiao Baolin here these days. The Empress should have met her. Chu Luchen said lazily. The matter had been settled, and he was not afraid that someone would secretly deal with his people. He reported it to the Empress, in case the Empress made a wrong match and caused some unnecessary trouble. The granddaughter of R and great elder princess? The Empress moved her body and asked slowly. Exactly. Imperial grandmother thinks it's good, and so does my uncle. I originally wanted to wait until the end of the consort selection before giving the decree, but Imperial grandmother said that the present time is good, and there should be a decree to Duke Xing's mansion in these 2 days. Chu Luchen narrowed his eyes and said lazily, looking very casual. It was hard to tell whether he was satisfied or dissatisfied with the marriage, but one thing was sure that he did not object. The Empress suddenly felt relieved. 3 years ago, she had heard that the Empress Dowager liked Xiao Wanru, but she hadn't taken any action since then. Moreover, she felt that Chu Luchen didn't seem to like anyone, so she didn't take it seriously. But now, it seemed to be true. However, thinking about it carefully, it seemed to be the case. Compared with others, Xiao Wanru had at least contacted Chu Luchen several times and felt good about him. This invalid was such a casual person, so she decided to marry him since they got along well. The Emperor and the Empress Dowager had always doted on this sickly child, so they definitely didn't think it was a big deal. It is indeed a good marriage, and she is also a good girl, but Duke Xing's mansion is now. The Empress probed and paused as if she didn't know how to start. Chu Luchen naturally answered her words. I know your concern, Your Majesty, but this kind of thing has nothing to do with 5th Miss Xiao. She originally returned to Duke Xing's mansion halfway, and she doesn't have much affection for Duke Xing's mansion. I heard that Duke Xing's mansion has always been displeased with her, and the legitimate daughter of the eldest branch is even worse than the daughter of a concubine. Chu Luchen said casually with the corners of his eyes slightly raised. No one could see his mood clearly, and even with a gentle smile on his face, he elegantly picked up the teacup at hand and took a sip. Then he slowly put it down, looked up at the Empress, and said with a smile, "I hope your Majesty won't marry 5th Miss Xiao again." "I understand." The Empress nodded and said. She had already scolded Chu Luiwei thoroughly in her heart. She almost made a big mistake. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I also have something to do, so I'll leave first." Chu Luchen had achieved his goal, so he stood up and cupped his hands in obeisance. "Prince Chen, do as you please." The Empress was very polite and smiled very gently and kindly. Chu Luchen nodded, turned around and strode away. Watching him leave, the smile on the Empress's face faded little by little, and then became gloomy and cold. She picked up the teacup at hand, smashed it hard on the ground, and lost control of herself and scolded, "They all think that I'm a fake. They all come to fool me." "Your Majesty!" Her trusted servant hurriedly called in a low voice. "One wants Ben Gong to stand on the opposite side of His Majesty and Empress Dowager, putting Ben Gong on the fire so that he can reap the benefits. The other's marriage wasn't decided by Ben Gong in the first place, and Ben Gong didn't plan on meddling in his business. However, the edict had already been decided, yet Ben Gong didn't know anything. If Ben Gong were to point her to someone else, then wouldn't that be Ben Gong's fault?" The Empress said angrily. She only felt depressed and full of anger. Chu Liwei was digging a trap for her to jump into, but Chu Liuchen's matter was related to the Emperor and the Empress Dowager. "For so many years, I have been managing the harem for the Emperor and have always been filial to the Empress Dowager. If the Empress Dowager doesn't like someone, I certainly don't like him, and I must find someone I like and send him to the Empress Dowager. Look at now, they simply treat me as an outsider." Speaking of this, the Empress's eyes turned red. She picked up a handkerchief to wipe her tears, and the more she thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. As the Empress, it's very common for me to want to grant marriage to the princes. But now it seems that I can't decide whether to grant marriage or not. "Your Majesty, don't be angry. Maybe this matter was decided by the Empress Dowager, and the Emperor didn't have time to tell you. After what happened today, the Emperor is also in a bad mood. You can't bother the Emperor for the matter of Prince Chen." The servant persuaded and ordered someone to serve tea again. The Emperor was obviously in a bad mood at this time, and whoever bumped into him would be unlucky. "I know that I won't bother the Emperor at this time, but I really can't swallow it." The Empress wiped away her tears and complained hatefully, "Since he is in the ranks, even if he is the son of the Emperor, he has to at least address Ben Gong respectfully. Look at him, he seems to be very polite, but he has never treated Ben Gong as a proper elder. How can we talk about this kind of thing now? It's also because of Prince Yu at this time." After connecting the things before and after, how could the Empress really not understand that these two people obviously came to find trouble with her? "Your Majesty, please be careful with your words." The servant was shocked, waved her hand, and drove the others in the hall out. After everyone went out, the servant whispered, "Your Majesty, you'd better not talk about Prince Qin in the future." This servant was the wet nurse brought by the Empress from her parents' home. After entering the palace, she was the wet nurse beside the Empress. She knew something about the things around the Empress, so she became more cautious. The Empress suddenly felt aggrieved, waved the handkerchief in her hand irritably, and said, "I'm not cautious. I'm not careful with my words. If I'm not careful with my words, I would have already blurted out the things over there. Look, Your Majesty, that kind of thing cannot be said. I beg you, you can't say it." The wet nurse's face changed greatly, and she hurriedly reached out to cover the Empress's mouth. The Empress pushed her wet nurse away and said angrily, "I know that the things over there can't be said. Others only know that I am the master of the harem, but they don't know that the one who really cares about it. For so many years, she has been protecting her well. Even if I want to see her, she won't allow me to see her. She said that she is grounded, but she is afraid that I will do something to her." The more the Empress spoke, the angrier she became, and the more she could not control her emotions. My good Empress, don't say any more. If the Emperor knows. The old nanny knelt down in front of the Empress with a plop, took one of the Empress's hands with both hands and shook it. Her face was as pale as snow, and she was so flustered that her whole body was trembling. She was really scared, so scared that her teeth almost chattered. This reminded the Empress of what had happened in the past. She felt humiliated and angry. For a moment, she clenched her teeth and made a cracking sound. How could she forget that time when she said a few more words? She was almost abolished as the Empress. Xiao Wanru did not expect to meet Chu Liuxin when she returned to Chuxiu Palace. He stood behind a tree at the corner of Chuxiu Palace. If Yu Jie had not seen Chu Liuxin with her sharp eyes, Xiao Wanru would not have noticed that there was someone in the shadow. Chu Liuxin's appearance was completely different from what she had seen before. In the past, Chu Liuxin was a carefree person. As the youngest prince, although his mother was not simple, he looked simple. Even though he was about the same age as Xiao Wanru, in Xiao Wanru's eyes, he was more like a younger brother who was about the same age as Hao. But at the moment, Chu Liuxin was obviously different. He was gloomy and his eyes were a little empty. Standing under the tree and watching Xiao Wanru get out of the sedan chair, he walked over and stopped in front of Xiao Wanru. As the two of them stood close, Xiao Wanru also saw Chu Liuxin's appearance clearly. He did not look right. His face was as pale as snow, without a trace of blood, like Chu Liuxin's face, which was sick and weak. His clothes were also a little wrinkled. Although he was still the same person, his aura was completely different from before. If Chu Liuxin looked about the same age as Hao in the past, the Chu Liuxin in front of her looked like a real prince, with the unique coldness and indifference of the royal family, and even a little dark. His eyes, which had looked clear, were gloomy at this time. Greetings, Your Highness. Xiao Wanru lowered her head and bowed. Xiao Yanru, how is she? Chu Liuxin's voice was a little hoarse, which had not been seen in the past. It could be seen that he had not spoken for a period of time. Eunuch Liuzi looked at his master uneasily. Since coming out of the Empress's Fengyi Palace, his master's expression had not been right. At this time, he had been waiting at the gate of Chuxiu Palace early. Did he come to stop 5th Miss Xiao on purpose? Chapter 799. If it was in the past, Xiao Liuzi would have said something stupid to smooth things over. But today, Xiao Liuzi didn't dare to. He could only carefully follow behind his master and waited here for more than 2 hours. For such a long time, his master just stood there with a gloomy face, not moving at all. Xiao Wanru didn't know what Chu Liuxin meant at the moment, so she asked after hesitating for a moment, "Big sister is fine now. She is now a Baolin conferred by the Emperor. Prince Exin, do you want to ask her where she lives?" Although he felt that the possibility of this was not high, he still had to ask. He didn't die. Duke Xing's mansion is really powerful. Chu Liuxin sneered. Xiao Wanru found it difficult to answer. She lowered her head, looked at the corner of her dress, and didn't know how to answer for a moment. Why didn't that woman die? Chu Liuxin looked at Xiao Wanru and asked sharply. He looked at Xiao Wanru aggressively, as if he wanted Xiao Wanru to tell him everything. Your Highness, this is not something I can ask for. Xiao Wanru sighed and said helplessly. Chu Liuxin reached out and seemed to want to grab Xiao Wanru's hand. Yu Jie, who was on the side, quickly pulled Xiao Wanru and happened to avoid Chu Liuxin's hand. You testify for this king. Say that this king was framed. Chu Liuxin didn't grab Xiao Wanru, nor did he come over to pull her. He just said with a deep look. Xiao Wanru sighed in her heart. She knew that what happened today had a great impact on Chu Liuxin, so that he still couldn't accept it until now. However, being born in the royal family, how could he be so simple? In the last life, she didn't know how Chu Liuxin died. Was it also because he was too simple before? In this life, the two of them had known each other for a long time. Chu Liuxin had never done anything bad to her. Your Highness, it's all in the past. Both the Emperor and the Empress know that you've been wronged. Xiao Wanru comforted him in a soft voice as if she was comforting her younger brother. How? She raised her watery eyes and looked at Chu Liuxin. Her voice was gentle, but there was a hint of generosity in it. Chu Liuxin's eyes turned red, and he felt a lump in his throat. For some reason, his heart seemed to be pulled hard by something. It was very painful, sour, and sad, and he had an urge to cry. He didn't feel so aggrieved when he was scolded by his mother and punished to kneel down. But now, when he saw the gentle girl in front of him, he inexplicably wanted to hold her and cry. He took a step back and suppressed the palpitation in his heart. He knew that he couldn't be. He had been. Xiao Yanru had been discredited by the entire Duke Xing's mansion. If something happened to her again, no one would be able to protect her. Xiao over everything over. Things over. Xiao Wanru comforted Chu Liuxin. She could tell that Chu Liuxin was very sad and almost out of control. She sighed secretly in her heart. She had no malice toward Chu Liuxin and hoped that he could let go of everything today. I'm leaving. The young man turned around in a panic. He flicked his sleeve and wiped away a tear from the corner of his eye. Then he strode away. It was as if someone was chasing after him. Xiao Liuzi looked at Xiao Wanru and then at his master. He hurriedly cupped his hands to Xiao Wanru and hurriedly chased after her. It was not easy for his master to calm down. He had to keep an eye on her at all times in case anything happened to her. Xiao Wanru frowned slightly. Looking at Chu Liuxin's back as he left, she was speechless for a long time. This matter hurt Chu Liuxin a lot. But perhaps it was also a good thing. It could let Chu Liuxin really grow up, and he would not repeat the deadlock of his previous life. The Imperial Palace had never been clean. With so many women competing for favor, it was destined not to be peaceful or clean. It was just that Chu Liuxin's character was simple and lively in the past, so he did not notice it. Now that he was trapped, how could he not know it? Naturally, he could not be the same as before. Just from the fact that he didn't pull her back and instead turned to leave, she knew that he had controlled his temper. This should be considered a good thing, right? However, it was a sad thing. Being forced to grow was something that could not be helped. For example, Chu Luchin and herself. Mississippi, Yujia gently pulled her sleeves. Let's go. Xiao Wanru turned and entered the gate of Chuxiu Palace. Miss, did Prince Exin come to ask about First Miss's matter? Prince Exin must hate the First Miss to death. Yujia glanced behind her with sympathy, then chased after her and whispered to Xiao Wanru. It's not the First Mississippi. It's Xiao Baolin. Xiao Wanru had calmed down at this time and corrected her. I know. Xiao Baolin has done a lot of harm to people. Yujia nodded and couldn't help scolding. Prince Exin was such a simple boy, but he was harmed by her. It was really annoying. Xiao Wanru remained silent. She knew very well what kind of person Xiao Yanru was in her last life. Xiao Yanru would do anything to achieve her goal and viciously wipe out all the people who stood in her way. In her last life, she became one of the people Xiao Yanru had to wipe out, so she ended up in such a miserable situation. First Miss, will Prince Exin? Speaking of this, Yujia looked around. Seeing that no one was paying attention to them, she lowered her voice and said, will Prince Exin go to ask for a marriage? It seemed that Prince Exin specially came here because of the First Miss Xiao. However, Yujia also saw that he lost control of himself and wanted to hold her master's hand just now. It seemed that he was looking for her master's support, which was not a good feeling. Prince Exin had been in love with her master, so she didn't want him to make trouble again. Prince Exin had never been a calm person. He might do such a thing on impulse, which would be a bad thing. The First Miss Xiao had just caused a fight between the brothers. When Prince Exin went to propose marriage, he put her master on the fire again. He won't. Xiao Wanru shook her head. Thinking of Chu Liuxin's look just now, she said with certainty. If it were the old Chu Liuxin, Xiao Wanru really didn't know whether he would do it or not. But now he shouldn't. After this incident, Chu Liuxin was much more stable than before. Even if he couldn't control his emotions, he would leave by himself and come back after he calmed down. When she returned to the room, it was getting late. Standing in the corridor, she looked at the 4 rooms in a row. The 4 misses of Duke Xing's mansion used to live, but now she was the only one. She had an inexplicable feeling, so she deliberately stood in the corridor and didn't enter the room immediately. Yujie had already opened the door. Seeing that Xiao Wanru didn't come in, she stood in the corridor with a heavy look. Knowing that Xiao Wanru should have thought of something unhappy, she made a heater and handed it to Xiao Wanru, asking her to hold it to warm herself. The small heater was very warm. Holding it in her hand, it slowly warmed her tired body and mind. She chose a place where there was no ventilation and sat down. Leaning against the fence, she recalled what had happened today. Since Han Dan came to her early this morning and said that Xiao Yanru didn't sleep well last night, she had carefully arranged everything step by step. Xiao Yanru, who stayed alone in the Fengyi Palace and couldn't even go out conveniently, couldn't be so well connected. Someone must have helped her in secret, but there was another problem. The aphrodisiac was either poured by herself or she asked Shuqi to do it. It was indeed prepared when Shuqi asked the palace maid, who was responsible for decocting the medicine, to go out to fetch water. Judging from the creases on the medicine bag, it had been prepared a long time ago. Who gave her this medicine? Or had she prepared it before entering the palace? Xiao Wanru thought for a while and thought that it might be the latter. Xiao Yanru came to the palace with the determination to win. If she failed, she would naturally have other means, and the aphrodisiac was one of them. Who was the person Xiao Yanru was most likely to contact in the palace and who was likely to help her? There were many people in the palace, but Xiao Wanru couldn't think of who it was at the moment. She only felt vaguely clueless, but it seemed that there were thousands of clues, but she just didn't find them. "Miss, go in. It'll be cold." Seeing that she had been silent, Yujie just lowered her head slightly and persuaded her worriedly. Although there was no ventilation here, it was getting late. Even if there was a little sun, it was not so warm, so it was just a little more light. "I'm not cold." Xiao Wanru shook her head, still holding the heater tightly, and looked up at the door diagonally opposite. It happened to be the room where Xiao Zaihuan had lived. "Miss, do you want to go to the third Miss's room to have a look?" Yujie misunderstood her meaning and persuaded her, "Miss, you'd better not go in. There may still be a lingering smell in that room. When I went in that day, there was a little smell." Both the master and the servant knew what the smell was. Xiao Zaihuan was sent out with pustules on her face because she was poisoned, and this was originally intended to deal with Xiao Wanru. Protective talisman? After staring at the door of Xiao Zaihuan's room for a while, Xiao Wanru's eyes suddenly lit up and she suddenly sat up straight. Yujie looked at Xiao Wanru in confusion and asked subconsciously, "Miss, what's the protective talisman?" Suddenly, she came to a sudden realization and said, "You mean the matter about the third miss, right? The matter about the third miss is related to the protective talisman. Haven't you already known about it?" Yujie didn't understand why Xiao Wanru brought it up at this time. Hadn't it passed long ago? Xiao Wanru suppressed the excitement in her heart, took a deep breath, slowed down her impulsive words, and then stood up and shook her head at Yujie. "I don't mean that. Third sister, I suddenly remembered another important thing. Let's go to third sister's room and have a look." The key had been stolen by Han Dan and given to Yujie before, and now it was in Yujie's hands. Although Yujie didn't understand what Xiao Wanru meant, she still took out the key and went to open the door of Xiao Zaihuan's room. Xiao Wanru was about to go to Xiao Zaihuan's room when she suddenly saw a familiar figure standing in the corner. She couldn't help stopping and turning to that person, wondering why she came to her room at this time. Didn't they pretend not to know each other even if they met before? Chapter 800. "Sister Wanru, can I have a word with you?" Qi Rongji, who was standing in the corner, saw Xiao Wanru looking at her. She walked out, took 2 steps forward and looked at Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru's cold eyes fell on Qi Rongji. She had already known that Qi Rongji had been given a token. She had seen Qi Rongji appear in the etiquette learning group several times and stay far away from her every time, so she knew that Qi Rongji was avoiding her. It was really surprising that Qi Rongji took the initiative to come forward this time. Judging from Qi Rongji's behavior these days, Qi Rongji seemed to be afraid of getting involved with her. "Miss Qi, please call me 5th Miss Xiao." "What's the matter, Miss Qi?" Xiao Wanru asked lightly with a pair of cold watery eyes under her long eyelashes. Qi Rongji pulled her sleeves uneasily. Every time she saw Xiao Wanru, she felt that Xiao Wanru was changing and becoming more and more dignified, which made her inexplicably flustered. "Miss Chi, if there's nothing else, you can go back." Seeing that she didn't speak for a long time, Xiao Wenru said and turned to leave. "Fifth Miss Xiao, please wait a minute." Qi Rongji thought for a while and said in a low voice, "I heard that something happened to the first Miss Xiao. Is it true?" Xiao Wenru paused and then suddenly turned around. She looked at Qi Rongji coldly and said with a sneer, "What do you want to know, Miss Qi? What do you want to know? This is the business of our Duke Xing's mansion. I won't tell you. Miss Qi, you are no longer a member of Duke Xing's mansion." Since Qi Rongji escaped from Duke Xing's mansion, she had nothing to do with Duke Xing's mansion. "But I don't mean that. I just want to know." Qi Rongji stammered and said, "I just want to ask if the first Miss Xiao has anything to do with it." "If, Miss Qi, who are you to ask that? If you just want to ask that, you really don't have to. People who are too curious will die quickly." After saying that, Xiao Wenru ignored Qi Rongji and turned back to the room. Qi Rongji originally wanted to stop her, but in the end, she bit her lip and held back. Watching Xiao Wenru disappear from her sight, there was some unwillingness in her eyes. In fact, she didn't come here for Xiao Yenru. She just asked Xiao Wenru if she wanted to be Princess Yu on behalf of Chu Luiyue. Chu Luiyue had met Chu Luqin at the Empress's place before, so he had to leave. After leaving, he felt worried about this matter, so he asked Qi Rongji, who happened to meet him, to pass a message to him. Qi Rongji didn't mention it at all. She only mentioned Xiao Yenru and successfully made Xiao Wenru leave in anger. She took a deep breath and told herself that it was not that she did not want to pass the message, but that Xiao Wenru did not give her a chance. Even if Prince Yu wanted to blame someone, he could not blame her. With such thoughts in mind, Zhang Xian calmed down and turned around to leave. "Miss, what does Miss Qi mean? What are you talking about?" Yu Jie was puzzled by Qi Rongji's appearance, so she asked after entering the room. Previously, she had been hiding so much that she was afraid that he would get involved with her. Today, she had specially come over to say a few words. Anyone who heard such words would not be in a good mood. Was she purposely looking for trouble? I don't think she wanted to come here. Xiao Wenru put down the heater in her hand and shook her head. Qi Rongji looked reluctant. Who asked her to come here just to say these words to hurt Duke Xing's mansion? Yu Jie became more and more curious. Xiao Wenru shook her head. It was not easy to find this person. It might be a beauty who followed Qi Rongji, a noble in other imperial palaces, or her good elder brother. But one thing was certain. Qi Rongji did not want to come here, and her original words should be more than these. However, no matter who sent her here and what she wanted to say, it had little to do with her. She did not want to waste her time on Qi Rongji now. Leave her alone. Xiao Wenru shook her head and stopped paying attention to Qi Rongji. Yu Jie, go to inquire about some things about the protective talisman tomorrow. If anyone doubts the reason why you asked about it, just say that the mansion has doubts about it and wants to ask about it. There is something wrong with the protective talisman? Yu Jie was not stupid. She immediately understood Xiao Wenru's meaning. Xiao Wenru thought for a moment and unconsciously touched the heater on the table with a trace of doubt in her watery eyes. She suspected the protective talisman, but she was more suspicious of a person, Pushun Nun. The protective talisman had only appeared recently. It seemed that it was specially made for the consort selection. What a coincidence! Pushun Nun was also familiar with Xiao Yenru. Xiao Yenru was most familiar with Pushun Nun in the Imperial Palace. Others seemed to be not as familiar with Xiao Yenru as Pushun Nun. After all, the two of them had a master and disciple relationship. From this point of view, Pushun Nun was different to Xiao Yenru. On the other hand, Xiao Wenru had always felt that this Pushun Nun was very strange. During the 3 years in the Yuhui nunnery, she had rarely seen this Pushun Nun. It seemed that this Pushun Nun was really fresh and refined and devoted herself to cultivation. But if it was true, this Pushun Nun would not enter the Imperial Palace, or if she entered the Imperial Palace, she could make an excuse to go back early. But now this Pushun Nun actually lived in the Buddha Hall in the Imperial Palace and even said that there was such a protective talisman. Xiao Wenru didn't think that it was the Empress Dowager who forced her to live here. Pushun Nun had been in the Yuhui nunnery for a long time. For so many years, the Empress Dowager had never forced her to live here. This time, it should be Xiao Yanru who brought it up. Xiao Wanru remembered that the time when she invited Pushun Nun to enter the Imperial Palace happened to be when she was about to send the paintings of the religious ceremony drawn by Pushun Nun to the Imperial Palace. Old Madam had asked Nanny Yu to go up the mountain and forced her to send the dirty atlas to the Imperial Palace. At that time, she had been prepared, which made Xiao Yanru and Old Madam's plan fail. Then, the Empress Dowager summoned Pushun Nun to enter the Imperial Palace. If there was no connection between them, Xiao Wanru would never believe it. Did it mean that the Empress Dowager had a plan and was just looking for an opportunity to mention Pushun Nun? Xiao Yanru suddenly thought of something. Xiao Yanru and Pushun Nun seemed to have no connection, but there were some vague connections. If her guess was true, this Pushun Nun must not be simple, and she must have other plans. The Imperial Palace was the place where the most power was concentrated. In fact, it was easy to figure out what she wanted. But these were only superficial. If she wanted something, there must be a way. How could she, a nun, get it? She slowly closed her watery eyes and thought about the past. Xiao Yanru was a person who fished for fame and compliments, while Pushun Nun seemed to be a person with great wisdom. Since she accepted Xiao Yanru as her disciple, how could she not suspect her? But she still got along with Xiao Yanru, which showed that there was a mystery in it. When they went up the mountain, Pushun Nun's disciple was in a dilemma, and before they went down the mountain, Xiao Yanru's plan always seemed to involve Pushun Nun. However, this nun was always innocent, and she always gave people the image of an otherworldly master, which made people feel that it was a kind of blasphemy to suspect her. Yu Jie, you grew up in the nunnery. Have you ever seen someone like Pushun Nun? Xiao Wanru blinked, slowly opened her eyes, and asked Yu Jie with watery eyes. Yu Jie was stunned at first, and then she thought for a while and shook her head. Yu Jie was stunned for a moment. Then she thought for a while and shook her head. Miss, Pushun Nun is like a superior who lives in the clouds. No one in Jiangzhou is as aloof as her. Even the master of Jingxin Monastery is not so free from worldly affairs. She always holds herself high. Do you also think that Pushun Nun has always held herself high? Xiao Wanru smiled slightly. Of course she holds herself high. I remember that when I just came to the Yuhui nunnery, it was Pushun Nun's disciple who made things difficult for us and wanted to drive us down the mountain. In fact, Pushun Nun's disciple is not so good. Yu Jie thought of the past and said angrily, "How about the Yuhui nunnery?" Xiao Wanru changed the topic with a smile. The Yuhui nunnery is too mysterious. Yu Jie thought for a while and used two words to describe the Yuhui nunnery. This was the conclusion she had drawn after 3 years. Why? Xiao Wanru asked with interest. Miss, the Yuhui nunnery is indeed mysterious. You see, so many things have happened in the Yuhui nunnery, and each of them is very mysterious. Suddenly, a man in black came in and killed people, and suddenly, the hall was burned down by the fire, and the who gave birth to the son of the late emperor suddenly appeared. It is actually a great ability to hide in the Yuhui nunnery for so long without being discovered. There has been someone watching outside the door. It has been 3 years, and it is impossible for me to get close to it. Yu Jie curled her lips and said. Her words reminded Xiao Wanru that she had seen more than Yu Jie. The Yuhui nunnery was indeed mysterious, and so was Pushun Nun with unpredictable intentions. As for Xiao Yanru, it was very likely that Pushun Nun helped her secretly. Try to find out more about Pushun Nun in the palace. Just say that it is because of the protective talisman. After thinking for a while, Xiao Wanru had made up her mind. Don't worry, Mississippi. I understand. Yu Jie nodded and said. Xiao Yanru became the of the emperor's harem before the consort selection was over. As the eldest daughter of lineal descent in Duke Xing's mansion, she only lived in Baolin, which could be said to be something that no one had expected. Before, Xiao Yanru was a popular candidate for the princess of several princes, and everyone had been guessing. If she was not Princess Yu, she must be Princess Zhou. No one had expected that she not only did not marry into several princes' mansions, but also entered the palace at this time and became the lowest. It was mysterious in every way. Because of the emperor's decree, the whole mansion of Duke Xing's mansion felt lifeless. The sensitive servants didn't even dare to speak loudly for fear of provoking their masters. Everyone outside the mansion was guessing what the first Miss Xiao had done, so that she actually entered the palace at this time and had such a low position. Some people guessed this way while others guessed that way. Of course, all of them were good. Moreover, some people dug up some old stories of the first Miss Xiao, which originally made people feel that it was not true. But this time, it was overwhelming. Everything showed that the first Miss Xiao was really not a good person. All the reputation in the past was fake. The first Miss Xiao was not a peaceful Mississippi. She behaved abnormally and fished for fame. It was said that the emperor had originally given the first Miss Xiao a good position for the sake of Duke Xing. But the first Miss Xiao was restless and wanted to harm a pregnant, so that it became the lowest Baolin. Chapter 801. When Xiao Yanru was in the Yuhui nunnery, there were some rumors. However, at that time, Xiao Yanru was very famous, so few people believed it. They all thought that the first Miss Xiao was just jealous of her reputation, so there were all kinds of rumors. Now that the Imperial Palace issued the decree and connected with the previous causes, how could they not understand? This kind of rumor even spread to the beauties in the Imperial Palace. After Xiao Yanru's matter was settled, Xiao Wanru also returned to the ranks of the beauties. Seeing that the beauties secretly pointed at her in 2s and 3s with disdainful faces, she naturally heard that they were talking about Duke Xing's mansion and Xiao Yanru. Even she, the fifth Miss Xiao, was ridiculed. Yu Jie was very angry and wanted to argue with them, but was stopped by Xiao Wanru. She didn't care about this kind of discussion. Originally, it was deliberately spread. Otherwise, how could the beauties in the Imperial Palace really know about it? Xiao Yanru's identity was extraordinary, but she only got the title of Baolin Forest, which was too abnormal. There must be a justifiable reason. Since the emperor still wanted to use Duke Xing's mansion, he could only find a reason from Xiao Yanru. Since Xiao Yanru and Xiao Wanru officially confronted each other, many things about Xiao Yanru's reputation had been found, but they were tightly suppressed in the past. After a little spread, they were refuted by people with ulterior motives. The most important thing was that Xiao Yanru had an excellent reputation at that time, and she was beautiful and talented. The title of the first beauty and the disciple of Pushun nun in the Yuhui nunnery made Xiao Yanru's reputation rise again and again, suppressing all the rumors. Now that her reputation had collapsed, all the rumors in the past could be easily dug out. Those things were all true after careful investigation. It was impossible for Xiao Yanru's reputation to be good. It was the emperor's grace to Duke Xing's mansion to have such a title in Baolin Forest. The beauties in the Imperial Palace talked about it, and Xiao Wanru became the target of their criticism. The people outside the Imperial Palace were even more excited. Originally, the most discussed topic in the capital city was who would win this time and who might be the princess of the princes. Unexpectedly, such a thing happened, and it was infinitely magnified by people with ulterior motives. Duke Xing is here again? In the quiet mountain temple, the lake was ethereal. In the lake, Prince Cheng stood by the lake with his hands clasped behind his back and asked, "Yes, Your Highness." Shichi replied. Prince Cheng did not look back. After thinking for a while, he said, "Let him go back. I can't save his daughter." "Yes, I will go and reply now," Shichi said respectfully and went outside to pass the message. Before long, Shichi came back and said, "Your Highness, Duke Xing begs you to meet him anyway. He has something important to report to you." "Something important?" Prince Ching raised the corner of his mouth mockingly. He really had no interest in this daughter of Duke Xing originally. He had thought of marrying her as an ornament. It would be good for him to have a daughter who was born to be a phoenix. Unexpectedly, she was such a woman. The rumors outside had already reached his ears. Originally, he thought it was just an excuse from the palace. He asked someone to investigate it in private and found that it was all true. The first Miss Xiao, who was always virtuous, gentle, and dignified, turned out to be a vicious and despicable woman in private. Even if such a woman was given to him, he would not want it. Innate phoenix fate? If it was a woman who entered the palace and married his imperial brother who was born to be a phoenix, he really had no interest in her. This reminded him of another disgusting woman a few years ago, the eldest daughter of Ningyuan Army General Qin Huayong. That woman also disgusted him. Originally, he thought that there was only one such woman in the world. He did not expect that this kind of thing was not unique. Now there was Xiao Yenru. If all women were like this, he really could not arouse any interest in them. Duke Xing said so, Your Highness. I don't think he is referring to Xiao Baolin. Shiqi said cautiously and stole a glance at his master. Seeing that he was not angry, he breathed a sigh of relief. He was Prince Cheng's personal eunuch, so he naturally knew about his master's affairs. Let him come in. Prince Cheng thought for a while, raised his lips mockingly and said slowly. Shiqi left and soon came in with Duke Xing's Xiao Jing. Seeing Prince Cheng, Duke Xing stepped forward and bowed deeply. Prince Cheng waved his hand and Shiqi stepped back and stood aside. Duke Xing, you are too polite. Prince Cheng turned around and said to Xiao Jing with a smile. Xiao Jing looked at Prince Cheng and lowered his head, saying, Your Highness, I have something to report to you. What do you think of your daughter's affairs? Prince Cheng glanced at him leisurely and said unhurriedly, but he did not mention the so-called important topic. This made Xiao Jing's heart tighten. Thinking of his daughter's affairs, he couldn't help feeling a little ashamed. The emperor called him to the imperial palace and scolded him severely. After that, he was pulled aside by Durong and told him vaguely about Xiao Yinru's affairs. Hearing that his daughter plotted against the emperor, Xiao Jing was so angry that he almost rushed to Xiao Yenru and beat her hard. How could he have such a brainless daughter? Didn't he hear her repeatedly say that she would marry either Prince Yu or Prince Zhou in the future? Now she plotted against the emperor and wanted to be his concubine. Didn't she think that the emperor was old? In the future, the world would belong to either Prince Yu or Prince Zhou, or even Prince Cheng. When the matter was exposed, it not only provoked the emperor's anger, but also made him lose face. I don't know what happened. When the news was sent to the imperial palace, I should have understood it. Her has always been smart, but I don't know why she. Xiao Jing lowered his head and said. In fact, he was not very clear about it until now and always felt that there was something mysterious about it. But now he couldn't meet Xiao Yenru and ask her clearly. Duke Xing didn't say anything suggestive in the letter he sent before, did he? I've treated Duke Xing sincerely, but Duke Xing has other plans. It really bitterly disappointed me. Prince Cheng's face turned cold and he looked at Xiao Jing with cold eyes. It was Xiao Qing who asked Prince Cheng to help deliver the letter. Prince Cheng spent a lot of effort to deliver the letter to the imperial palace, but he didn't expect that it would end up like this. It was really beyond Duke Xing's expectation. Your Highness, it's not what you think. I didn't say anything misleading. Xiao Jing gritted his teeth and wanted to ask if Prince Cheng had sent any other message. But after thinking for a while, he didn't dare to ask again. Do you think there is something mysterious about it? I don't know whether there is something mysterious or not. I only know that the first miss of Duke Xing got what she wanted. She entered the imperial palace as she wished and had the phoenix ceremony. She was born to be the phoenix. It's true that she was born to be the phoenix. Prince Cheng smiled slightly, walked forward slowly and said casually. Xiao Jing, who was following him, was terrified when he heard this. He hurriedly lowered his head and said, Your Highness, I think there must be something else. But I can't see my daughter now, so I don't know what happened at that time. I have been ambitious since I was a child. How could I do such a thing? It was your first miss's intention to make Prince Yu and Prince Zhou fight before. Duke Xing, you really have a good daughter. Not only is she born to be a princess, but she also made several princes fight with each other. Now you made my brother take her away. You are very resourceful. It is hard to say what will happen in the end. In the end, it's really hard to say that she will be the empress of the imperial palace in the future. Prince Cheng's words seemed to be mocking and sarcastic, which made people feel cold on their backs. Many people had seen what had happened between Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou, so it was very easy for Prince Cheng to inquire about it. However, Prince Cheng didn't know that Xiao Yenru hooked up with the emperor in the Fengyi Palace. After all, it was the Empress's Fengyi Palace, so not everyone could do it. Your Highness, I'm terrified. Xiao Jing lowered his body and said hurriedly. He was also secretly annoyed with his daughter. He had thought that his daughter was promising and could revitalize the family, but he didn't expect that she would make such a mess. You're terrified, but I'm more terrified. Prince Cheng smacked his lips and said helplessly. Your Highness, I've followed you for several years, so I really don't dare to have other delusions. Your Highness, you must believe that I never dare to be disloyal, let alone have the idea of hooking up with the Emperor. Xiao Jing panicked and began to sweat on his forehead. You won't hook up with my brother, but will hook up with his two princes. I heard that the first Miss Xiao is not only beautiful, but also has a good relationship with the other two princes. It is said that they have been childhood friends and childhood sweethearts. Prince Cheng squinted at Xiao Jing, who was about one step behind him, and said, he didn't know it before he investigated it, but he didn't expect that there was such a thing. This was also why Prince Cheng felt that Xiao Yanru was disgusting and shameless. A daughter of a noble family? How could she be so shameless and mean? It really cleared Prince Cheng's mind. Moreover, it also made him doubt Xiao Jing's loyalty. If Xiao Yanru really married one of his nephews, would she stand on the opposite side of him in the future? As Xiao Yanru's father, would Xiao Jing really stand on his side at that time? Your Highness, these are all rumors deliberately spread. You know Ru Er's current situation. If there are no bad rumors, it will be difficult for the Imperial Palace to convince the public. Xiao Jing said in a panic with his fingers trembling. He knew that Prince Cheng was not only talking about his daughter, but also himself. The truth can't be fake, and the falsehood can't be true. I heard that you have a daughter? Prince Cheng suddenly glanced at him and asked when he had almost finished beating him. Yes, I have another daughter of non-lineal descent, Xiao Jing said anxiously. Is she married? Prince Cheng asked lightly. No, not yet. He had been waiting for Commandery Prince Qing to come, but Chu Qing seemed to forget it and didn't come. At this time, Xiao Jing didn't dare to say anything. Since she hasn't married, send her to my mansion. Prince Cheng glanced at Xiao Jing casually and said. Xiao Jing didn't dare to say no. He nodded repeatedly and said, Okay, I'll go back and prepare it now. It's not urgent at this time. When I'm ready, send your little daughter here. Tell me the important thing you want to tell me first. Prince Cheng slowly returned to the original topic. After suppressing him enough, it was time to get down to business. Chapter 802. Yes. Xiao Jing nodded repeatedly. Now whatever Prince Cheng said was good, he did not dare to disagree. She was just a little daughter. It was better to give her to Prince Cheng than to Commandery Prince Qing. Compared with Commandery Prince Qing, who was useless, Prince Cheng was the most powerful one. Your Highness, I heard that you want to find some calligraphy? Xiao Jing changed the topic in a hurry after wiping the cold sweat on his forehead. Prince Cheng's face immediately turned cold. He suddenly stood still, turned his head, looked at Xiao Jing coldly and said, What do you know? There were some things that Prince Qing did not believe Xiao Jing, and Xiao Jing should not know. Your Highness, I just happened to know it. I saw that your Highness sent someone to look for calligraphy and paintings. Xiao Jing hurriedly explained in a panic. Prince Cheng stared at Xiao Jing closely until the sweat on Xiao Jing's forehead rolled down again. He snorted and turned his head with a gentle look again. I do want to find some calligraphy. I like this kind of calligraphy with vigorous strokes. Duke Xing, do you have any good calligraphy and paintings? Without Prince Cheng's gaze, Xiao Jing breathed a sigh of relief. He hurried to catch up with Prince Cheng and said carefully, Your Highness, I have a piece of calligraphy and painting in my hand, but I don't know whether it is what your Highness is looking for. It looks strong and vigorous, but it doesn't seem to be the work of a famous master. I heard that your Highness likes it, so I brought it here. Xiao Jing did not dare to say that he had tried his best to find it. He had been hiding it and waiting for a more favorable opportunity. But now he had to take it out to please Prince Cheng. Xiao Yanru's entering the palace for the treasure forest had not only spoiled her own plans, but also Xiao Jing's. Without Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou by Xiao Yanru's side, Xiao Jing had no other way out. Now he could only follow Prince Cheng all the way and did not dare to be disloyal. Is there a seal? Prince Cheng clenched his hands tightly in his sleeves, suppressed the anxiety in his heart, and said slowly, "Yes, but I can't see it clearly." "Your Highness, do you want to see it?" Xiao Jing lowered his head and said earnestly, "Since you have brought it here, just show it to me later." Prince Cheng's hand slowly relaxed and there was a hint of a smile on his face. The previous cold anger had disappeared. Yes, I will leave the words for your Highness later." Since Prince Cheng was unwilling to tell him about this matter, he must not show that he knew about it. "Go. Your eldest daughter is no longer of much use, but don't you still have a younger daughter? In the future, this prince will naturally not mistreat this youngest daughter of mine. Although the status of a concubine's daughter is a bit low, why would this prince care about what status it is? Who knows, the phoenix fate might not even be your eldest daughter," King Cheng said half-jokingly. Her words reassured Xiao Jing and he relaxed a little. Although the status of the legitimate wife's daughter and the concubine's daughter were different, they were both of his blood. However, it was the same for him. Since it was his daughter and Prince Cheng's intention, everything was possible in the future, although her status in the mansion might be a little lower. "Thank you, Your Highness. I know. When Your Highness tells me, I will send my youngest daughter to the prince's mansion." Xiao Jing patted his chest and promised. Prince Cheng nodded with a smile and said to Shichi beside him, "Go and see Duke Xing off." Shichi understood and hurriedly reached out to Xiao Jing to show him, "Duke Xing, please." He saw Xiao Jing off all the way to the door. After seeing Xiao Jing get on the carriage, he winked at a secret guard. The secret guard, who had understood his meaning, followed him. After getting on the carriage at the gate of the temple, Xiao Jing wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and felt a lingering fear. He had no choice but to come up with this idea. He didn't dare to let Prince Ching know the origin of the painting. Now it was better to go back to the mansion. He was afraid that Prince Ching would target him first. If it hadn't been for Xiao Yanru's accident, he would never have exposed himself at this time. The only piece of calligraphy in his hand was originally worth more. Thinking of this, he was really disappointed with his eldest daughter. He didn't raise his daughter well. Xiao Jing guessed right. Someone was indeed watching his carriage. But he guessed wrong that it was not only Prince Cheng's men but also Chu Liuchen's men who were watching him. At noon that day, Chu Liuchen got the news. Calligraphy and painting? Chu Liuchen raised his eyebrows. There was no warmth in his beautiful eyes, which were frighteningly gloomy. Yes, it should be a long scroll of calligraphy and painting. Duke Xing held it tightly and waited outside for a long time, but Prince Ching didn't see him. Later, he asked someone to call him in. When he came out, he was polite. Shichi, who served Prince Cheng, specially sent him to the door and watched Duke Xing get on the carriage. "Uncle Wang, it seems that you are really interested in calligraphy and painting." Chu Liuchen twitched the corner of his mouth and said sarcastically, "At this time, he is still in the mood to appreciate the calligraphy and painting. It can be seen that the calligraphy and painting are indeed extraordinary." After such a serious accident, it was certain that Xiao Jing would go to show his loyalty to Prince Cheng. Chu Liuchen had always known that Prince Cheng had other intentions. But at that time, he didn't even care about his own life, so how could he care about anything else? He just took it as an entertainment and amused it when he was in a bad mood, so he had always asked someone to keep an eye on Prince Cheng. He didn't expect that he had to use it now. Exposing Prince Cheng in front of the public made Prince Cheng lose a lot of opportunities and attract the attention of his uncle. Compared with the past, Prince Cheng was in a much worse situation in front of his uncle. He didn't dare to act rashly in many things for fear of arousing suspicion. Xiao Jing had been close to Prince Cheng for a long time. It was something on Prince Cheng's side, and Chu Liuchen had known it for a long time. "Master, is it possible that it is something very important and will attract Prince Cheng's attention? After what happened to Xiao Baolin, the whole Duke Xing's mansion is in trouble. Do you think it is that calligraphy and painting?" Xiao Xuanzi rolled his eyes and reminded him. "It should be that calligraphy," Chu Liuchen said with certainty. "Then what are you going to do? Snatch it?" Xiao Xuanzi rubbed his palms excitedly. "This was a good thing. Don't worry. Let's wait for uncle to find a few more. Chu Luchun smiled slightly, and his expression immediately became gentle. Master, you're right. What about Prince Ching? Xiao Xuanzi nodded and agreed. Keep an eye on it first. Don't worry if Xiao Jing can't keep an eye on it. It can be seen that he has prepared for it since he suddenly took out this calligraphy in an emergency. But he didn't take it out early. Chu Luchun smiled lazily and coldly. He sat down in front of the chair and flicked the table in front of him with his slender fingers. This matter was getting more and more interesting. He was determined to get his hands on those pieces of calligraphy. If Prince Cheng was willing to collect them, then let him collect them first. Moreover, he thought that Xiao Jing could get them. Otherwise, with Prince Cheng's strength, he couldn't find them for so many years. No matter how powerful Xiao Jing was, he couldn't be as powerful as Prince Cheng. Moreover, he had never been out of the capital city. It was said that these calligraphy were out of the capital city at that time, but Xiao Jing had never been out of the capital city. When did he send someone out of the capital city? Or did he secretly go out of the capital city? When the Empress Dowager's decree came, Xiao Wanru and the beauties were learning etiquette from the nanny in charge. The nanny in charge turned a blind eye to some of the misses from aristocratic families who were good at learning etiquette and let them rest beside them without forcing them. Since Xiao Yenru's matter was exposed, the nanny in charge had also been reprimanded and didn't dare to be lenient anymore. She would learn from Xiao Yenru together with those who were good or bad. For this reason, Xiao Wanru had been implicated and had been looked down upon a lot these days, which made Yu Jie indignant for a long time. However, Xiao Wanru was very calm. She didn't say or do anything. She just followed the nanny in charge to learn etiquette in the palace and was directly rude to the malicious eyes of those misses from aristocratic families. Zhang Qilan was seriously ill. After being sent out of the palace, Xiao Wanru had been alone. Although there was no one to talk to, no one would deliberately try to get close to her, so she didn't have to pretend to be nice to others. Qi Rongji still avoided her as before. Every time Xiao Wanru approached her, she felt that she was very nervous, as if nothing had happened that day, so Xiao Wanru ignored her. There was a mystery in those inexplicable words, but she didn't want to deal with Qi Rongji. No matter what her purpose was, it had nothing to do with her. After a few days of peace, there were rumors among the beauties that Xiao Wanru couldn't be selected. Several misses from Duke Xing's mansion entered the palace to participate in the competition. At first, they had a great momentum, but in the end, they retreated one by one. It was really a slap in the face. The one left behind actually became a treasure forest in the palace. All the misses from aristocratic families felt it was funny. So what if the fifth Miss Xiao in front of him was beautiful? If she married any of the princes, her seniority would be wrong. Could she still get married? This was also one of the most important reasons why a group of beauties ignored Xiao Wanru. Everyone felt that she had no hope. At this time, the Empress Dowager's decree came and asked Xiao Wanru to go over, which immediately caused a commotion among the beauties. They watched Xiao Wanru leave in surprise and talked about it. What did the Empress Dowager mean? Did Xiao Wanru really have a chance? In a group of beauties' complicated eyes, Xiao Wanru got on the soft sedan waiting outside the palace gate and followed the people sent by the Empress Dowager to the Palace of Benevolent Peace where the Empress Dowager lived. This was not the first time she had come here. Unlike the first time, the Empress Dowager's palace was very quiet this time. There was no laughter from other S, which showed that there were no other S here. After respectfully bowing to the middle position, she stood up under the Empress Dowager's gentle words and stood aside respectfully. She lowered her head slightly. Although she still looked a little childish, she made people feel that she was steady and decent. She didn't panic at all, and the look on her face was very calm. The Empress Dowager remembered that when the palace maid came to report to her about the reactions of the beauties and Xiao Wanru, she nodded secretly. Xiao Wanru could still be calm after such a big thing happened to her sisters. In this aspect, she was indeed worthy of her chin. Chapter 803. Sit down. The Empress Dowager said gently. A servant had already brought a chair over. Xiao Wanru lowered her head and said, I dare not overstep. It doesn't matter. Sit down and talk to me. The Empress Dowager was very kind. Her purpose today was to see Xiao Wanru's reaction. She had also asked someone to inquire about Xiao Wanru's recent behavior and was very satisfied with her. Xiao Wanru answered softly, sat down on the chair beside her, straightened her back, put her hands on her knees, and lowered her head slightly. The servant served tea in front of her table, and then lowered her head and carefully retreated to one side. "How are you living in Chushio Palace?" the Empress Dowager asked with a smile. "Empress Dowager, I'm living well," Xiao Wanru said calmly. "No one said anything?" the Empress Dowager asked again. Xiao Wanru looked calmer and calmer without any resentment. "The beauties are all living well. It's not a big deal to say a little something. What do you think about your big sister?" the Empress Dowager said bluntly, while watching Xiao Wanru's reaction. "It's my big sister's fault." Xiao Wanru's face was full of shame, but she did not hide it. There was a blush on her pink face. If the situation at that time was really revealed, the whole Duke Xing's mansion would be implicated. The emperor is kind, and the Empress Dowager is kind. Others only said that Xiao Yanru was wronged, but in fact, Xiao Yanru was not wronged at all. Since she dared to do such a thing, she had to bear the responsibility after it was exposed. "Your big sister now lives in the Imperial Palace, but she can only look like this now. From now on, that place can be regarded as a cold palace, and it is basically impossible to see her again." The Empress Dowager's face turned cold. She really disliked Xiao Yanru. Was she still the granddaughter that old Madame of Duke Xing always praised? Xiao Wanru did not know why the Empress Dowager said such words to her. It was difficult for her to answer. She lowered her head and bit her lip, hesitating. Fortunately, the Empress Dowager did not intend to let her answer. She looked at her and said, "You and Chen have known each other for a long time. What do you think of Chen?" Although the Empress Dowager was satisfied and her grandson also came to ask for a marriage, she had to see Xiao Wanru's reaction. She couldn't give a granddaughter-in-law who didn't like Chen. Chen had been in poor health, but now he had finally recovered. He couldn't let his new granddaughter-in-law make trouble for him. Xiao Yanru was from Duke Xing's mansion, so she was a troublemaker. Although Xiao Wanru did not grow up in Duke Xing's mansion, the Empress Dowager still had scruples. "Prince Chen, very good." Xiao Wanru blushed, lowered her head, and unconsciously moved her hands on her knees, looking very shy. Seeing her like this, Empress Dowager was very satisfied. She nodded slightly and said, "Chen and you have been friends since childhood. At the beginning, Chen saved you at the gate of the palace. Do you still remember?" "I will never forget it," Xiao Wanru said softly. "That's good. Live a good life together in the future. Don't let me worry. Chen is not in good health. If there is anything unpleasant in the future, just tell me. Don't bother Chen," the Empress Dowager Queen exhorted. His words were very straightforward, and he had almost confirmed Xiao Wanru's identity. Xiao Wanru felt inexplicably shy, but she also felt relieved. She bit her lip and just nodded with a blush. Since her identity was not clear, she couldn't answer the Empress Dowager's words at this time. "Imperial Grandmother, what are you talking about? Let me laugh along with you." A leisurely voice came from the door. Chu Luchen, dressed in a light cyan brocade robe, walked in slowly. He was handsome, followed by Xiao Xuanzi, who was smiling. Both the master and the servant looked very likable. He walked up to Empress Dowager and bowed to her. Then he turned his head and glanced at Xiao Wanru, who was blushing, with an increasingly elegant smile. Sensing Chu Liuchen's gaze, Xiao Wanru's face almost burned. She hurriedly stood up and bowed to him. Chu Luchen waved his hand and said with a smile, "Don't." He lifted his robe and sat down on a chair aside. "Imperial Grandmother, tell me." "Child, you're joking with Imperial Grandmother again. Which eye of yours saw Imperial Grandmother talking about something funny?" Empress Dowager, who was amused by his intimate attitude, reached out her finger and gently touched Chu Liuchen's forehead and answered with a smile. After saying that, she looked at Xiao Wanru, who became more and more shy. "It can't be that you heard that I brought him here, so you directly came over?" After saying that, She looked at Chu Liuchen's forehead and really saw some sweat stains. She couldn't help feeling distressed for a moment and complained to Xiao Xuanzi, "Why don't you keep an eye on your master? Look at how tired your master is. If he does this again next time, he will inevitably be beaten with a stick." Xiao Xuanzi cried out in grievance, "Empress Dowager, I tried to persuade my master to come here slowly. He would be fine. However, my master was worried and came here just like this. I couldn't stop him even if I wanted to. If Empress Dowager punishes me again, I will really feel wronged." After saying that, he wiped away the tear stains at the corners of his eyes, which made Empress Dowager laugh. Chu Luchen laughed and scolded, "You have a sweet tongue. You put all the blame on me." Hearing what he said, everyone laughed, and the atmosphere immediately relaxed. Xiao Wanru also relaxed her straight shoulders a little and secretly breathed a long sigh of relief. With Chu Luchen around, she was indeed much more at ease. "Like master, like servant. Look at what you said. You coax me so much that I can't beat you. Since you are so concerned about your master's affairs, I will remember this beating. Reward him first." Empress Dowager wiped away tears of laughter and said. A palace maid came over and handed Xiao Xuanzi a big pouch. He was so happy that he knelt down and kowtowed several times, and then retreated to the side happily. "Imperial grandmother, I thought you were going to give an order, so I ran so fast. If I had known that you were just gossiping, I wouldn't have come." Chu Luchen said with disgust. "I give an order. I will give an order in a while." Empress Dowager looked at them and then looked at Xiao Xuanzi. Both of them looked like a golden boy and jade girl coming out of a painting. She was so happy that she nodded repeatedly and said with a smile, "Imperial grandmother, you should hurry up. I'm afraid that the Empress won't like it." Chu Luchen frowned in distress and said. Xiao Wanru sat there looking down and regarded herself as the background of a wooden sculpture. But her hands were clasped together, and it could be seen that she was nervous inside. Why would the Empress object? What does it have to do with her? Empress Dowager was unhappy. "I heard that it's because of seniority. It seems to be about Xiao Baolin," Chu Luchen said. His words reminded Empress Dowager. She immediately knew what Chu Luchen meant. She snorted coldly and said with her face darkening, "Xiao Baolin's affairs happened later. If the seniority is wrong, it's Xiao Baolin's own business. How can you be involved? 3 years ago, I have already made the decision for you. Even if it's Xiao Baolin's affairs, it doesn't matter. Moreover, Xiao Baolin is just Xiao Baolin, and he won't be an eyesore in the future." "Imperial grandmother, it's good that you think so," Chu Luchen said with a smile and looked at Xiao Wanru with unconcealable love in his eyes. Seeing that her grandson was really satisfied with Xiao Wanru, Empress Dowager liked him more and more. At the same time, she couldn't help feeling sad. This child had not picked a suitable one for so many years, but the one in front of her seemed to be a little different. Not to mention that the seniority was not Xiao Wanru's fault. Even if it was really Xiao Wanru's fault, Empress Dowager would not care. Chu Luchen talked with Empress Dowager for a while. Seeing that it was getting late, Empress Dowager asked them to stay for lunch. After eating, they left together. The soft bridge was waiting at the gate of the Palace of Benevolent Peace, but Chu Luchen walked slowly with Xiao Wanru instead of taking the soft sedan chair. After leaving a long distance from the palace gate, Xiao Wanru asked in a low voice, "Your Highness, why do you come here at this time?" "I'm worried that Imperial grandmother will scare you. I can't let anything happen to my future princess," Chu Luchen teased, squinting at her with his beautiful eyes and smiling elegantly. Xiao Wanru's heart beat wildly twice, and she felt a little lost. It was a kind of indescribable feeling. In the memory of her last life, she had always been despised. Even if she was not despised, no one treated her like this. Even when Shichi, who had always been gentle to her, did not care about her so much. There would not be any danger in Empress Dowager's place. What Empress Dowager cared about was Chu Luchen, so she would not do harm to her at this time. But it could not be said that Empress Dowager would be fine. Just now, Empress Dowager's meaning was very obvious. She was testing her. If she could not pass the test, she would lose the position of princess. Although she might still enter Prince Chen's mansion, she could not be the person who could accompany him openly. In the past, maybe she did not care about it. She just regarded herself as a shield, but now she was worried about it. Empress Dowager's summon this time seemed to be ordinary, but in fact, it was very important. Her heart was very soft, and the hard barrier had long been removed unconsciously. Glancing at him, her long eyelashes fluttered twice, which were as clear as two springs. Chu Luchen turned his head and happened to see her clear watery eyes, which were full of his shadow. His handsome eyes could not help but show a smile. He liked the feeling that she was devoted to him wholeheartedly. Don't worry. Imperial Grandmother's edict will arrive at your mansion today. Go back and pack up, and you should be out of the palace soon. Sensing his surging feelings, Chu Liuchen's voice softened, with a little hoarseness that had not been there in the past. Recently, the palace has not been peaceful. You'd better leave the palace as soon as possible. Xiao Wanru blinked her eyes again and again. She had an inexplicable impulse in her heart. She stretched out her hand from her sleeve and boldly held his hand outside the sleeve of his robe. His hand was no longer as cold as snow, and there was even a touch of warmth. However, she was so nervous that her hands and feet were cold. After holding his hand for a while, she turned around and walked forward quickly, not daring to look at him again. This was the first time that she had taken the initiative to hold Chu Liuchen's hand. At that moment, she actually saw Chu Luchen stunned, and then his handsome eyes also became shimmering and vivid. There came a low and dull laughter behind her ears. Her hand was held by a slender big hand, which pinched her tightly. It was very painful, but it also brought a kind of numbness, which made her intoxicated. Chapter 804. Xiao Wanru didn't come back with Chu Luchen. They had said what they should say. If they really accompanied her all the way here, it would be very inconvenient. There was no lack of people in the palace. If more people saw them, their words would not be very pleasant. After all, the Empress Dowager had not issued an order. Chu Luchen didn't have so many scruples. But seeing that Xiao Wanru was really reluctant, he didn't force her. He asked someone to find a soft bridge, and Xiao Wanru got on the soft sedan chair and returned to Chuxiu Palace. What she didn't expect was that someone knocked on the door just after she sat down in her room for a while. At this time, the nanny in charge gave the beauties appropriate freedom. Yujia went to open the door and saw Chu Luiwei standing outside. After being stunned for a moment, she hurriedly lowered her head and said respectfully, "Your Highness. Is 5th Miss Xiao here? There is a matter involving 5th Miss Xiao. I'm afraid you have to make it clear," Chu Luiwei said with a little coldness. "My master is inside," Yujia said and then added, "She just came back from the Empress Dowager's palace." Chu Luiwei nodded and led them into the room. Only then did Yujia see that Qi Rongji was also there. She couldn't help but widen her eyes and look at her a few more times. This first Miss Qi was afraid to get close to Miss, so she always hid in a place where Miss could not see. Why did she come with Prince Yu today? Xiao Wanru, who was in the room, had already heard the sound. She came out and bowed to Chu Luiwei respectfully. Chu Luiwei looked her up and down and found that she was only wearing a plain pleated skirt embroidered with butterflies. Except for a few gorgeous butterflies on the skirt, the rest of the color of the lake was not outstanding. However, when she wore it, it made people inexplicably feel a sense of tenderness and timidity. Her long eyelashes, which were like butterfly wings, fluttered twice, covering the elegance in her eyes. Even if her pink lips were just pursed, they were quite attractive. He didn't want to miss such a woman. He didn't know when he fell in love with her. Was it when he first saw her in the palace or some time later? Qi Rongji said that she ignored the rumors about him. Today, she specially came to talk to Xiao Wanru about it with the excuse of Qi Rongji. The position of Princess Yu was not something that anyone could sit on as they wished. Actually, with her status, she was still a little undervalued. "Have a seat." Chu Luiwei waved his hand and sat down in the middle. Xiao Wanru hesitated for a moment and sat down in a chair a little further away from him. "Your Highness is here, how would I dare to sit down?" Qi Rongji lowered her head and said softly, "Sit together." Chu Luiwei waved his hand impatiently. Qi Rongji didn't refuse. She sat down carefully and then smiled softly at Xiao Wenru. She really didn't look like the arrogant and domineering Qi Rongji. Yu Jie served tea and then stood behind Xiao Wenru. "What can I do for you, Your Highness?" After Chu Luiyue took a sip of tea, Xiao Wenru raised her watery eyes and asked, "Miss Qi's matter is related to 5th Miss Xiao, so I came here specially." Chu Luiyue coughed in a low voice and said, "If the Empress hadn't suddenly refused to help him, he wouldn't have come to Xiao Wenru directly. At the beginning, when he mentioned that he had chosen a beauty, the Empress showed that she was very willing to help him. But later, she always talked about other things and it was obvious that she didn't want to intervene. What does Miss Qi's matter have to do with me?" Xiao Wenru glanced at Qi Rongji, who was sitting beside Chu Luiyue, in surprise. After looking between them a few times, she seemed to understand something. Chu Luiyue was inexplicably displeased by Xiao Wenru's understanding look. He coughed in a low voice and said, "I heard from Miss Qi that when you were in Jiangzhou, you had a good relationship with Miss Qi. The two families also grew up together." Xiao Wenru's face became serious. She restrained her gentleness and became a little indifferent. "Your Highness, I don't know what first Miss Qi told you, but I don't have any friendship with the people of Qi's mansion. Or it can be said that not only do I have no friendship, but I also have a lot of hatred, the kind of hatred that is almost destroyed by others." Xiao Wenru said very straightforwardly and didn't deliberately save her face because of Qi Rongji's presence. Qi Rongji's face turned red. It seemed that she wanted to say a few words, but in the end she didn't. She lowered her head aggrievedly and even wiped the corners of her eyes, looking very sad. If Xiao Wenru really had a good relationship with her, she would probably feel sorry for her words just now, which had hurt her old best friend. Does 5th Miss Xiao still care so much about what happened in the past? Chu Luiyue frowned and said, "He liked magnanimous women. A woman who was too stingy was not the way to settle down." Xiao Wenru was so angry that she almost laughed. It was easy for Chu Luiyue to say that. It was not him who was almost destroyed at that time, so he said lightly, "Your Highness, what happened in the past is past, and I don't want to say anything more. I just don't want to hear that I have a good relationship with the people of Qi's mansion, and it has been since I was a child." Except for Qi Baiyu, she didn't want to have anything to do with anyone in the Qi family, and it was not the time to drag Qi Baiyu out alone at this time. 5th Miss Xiao, it was my elder brother who let you down at that time. I was not sensible at that time, and I was mean to you from time to time, because I thought my elder brother was hurt by you. Qi Rongji suddenly stood up and apologized sincerely. Xiao Wenru looked at Chu Luiyue, who showed an approving look, and then looked at Qi Rongji, who was obviously very wronged but still acted generously and decently. She felt sick in her heart. She really didn't know why these two came to her place. What happened to Qi Rongji had to do with her? How could it alarm Chu Luiyue, Prince Yu? Ignoring Qi Rongji's pretentious look, Xiao Wenru's eyes fell on Chu Luiyue. "Prince Yu, please tell me clearly what happened today." She didn't want to deal with Chu Luiyue, nor did she want to see Qi Rongji pretending to be pitiful. She was used to Qi Rongji's arrogance and domineering, so she really didn't think that there was any essential difference between the Qi Rongji in front of her and the Qi Rongji in the past. She just felt that this pretentious look was really fake. Qi Rongji was so embarrassed and looked at Chu Luiyue. "Sit down," Chu Luiyue said coldly. Qi Rongji sat down aggrievedly. "I want to investigate what happened in Jiangzhou. I heard that the former heir of Duke Xing had an accident in Jiangzhou. I think there is something wrong with it, so I came to ask Miss Qi first. Miss Qi's father is the magistrate of Jiangzhou, so she knows a lot of things. Miss Qi mentioned 5th Miss Xiao just now, so I came to ask 5th Miss Xiao." Chu Luiyue looked like he was doing business. "Your Highness, do you think there is something wrong?" Xiao Wenru's voice trembled unconsciously. She had always suspected it and wanted to find out about it. She raised her eyes, which were no longer calm, and pursed her lips tightly. Chu Luiyue was very satisfied with Xiao Wenru's reaction. He knew that Xiao Wenru would not ignore this kind of thing, so it was best to use this matter as a starting point. "There is something wrong indeed, so I want to ask Miss Qi and 5th Miss Xiao about it. I hope fifth Miss Xiao can answer my questions clearly. Chu Liyue said. Please ask, Your Highness. Xiao Wanru took a deep breath and said, Fifth Miss, when you were in Jiangzhou that day, did you feel that General Qin treated you differently from First Miss Qin? Chu Liyue asked lightly. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and shook her head. At that time, General Qin just didn't care about the affairs of the backyard, but this kind of thing is very common. The affairs of the backyard are all under Madame D's management. Even if the inner courtyard is under the management of Madame D, can't you feel it at all? Chu Liyue looked at her and asked again. Xiao Wanru shook her head. Chu Liyue waved his hand. Qi Rongji stood up and walked out obediently, leaving Chu Liyue alone. This feeling was very bad. Xiao Wanru's face became serious. Fifth Miss Xiao, can I have a word with you? Chu Liyue looked at Yu Jie, who was standing behind Xiao Wanru, and said, Your Highness, she is my trusted maid and will tell me everything she knows. If you have something to say, you can say it directly. Xiao Wanru refused. The current situation was not very good. If Yu Jie went out, it would be really hard to explain. Chu Liyue did not insist on letting Yu Jie go out. Hearing Xiao Wanru's words, he did not insist. He picked up the teacup at hand, took a sip, and said lightly, Fifth Miss Xiao, do you want to find out what happened that year? Why did nothing happen to others, but your parents happened to be in trouble? Your Highness, do you know something? Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on Chu Liyue's face, and her expression slowly calmed down. She was graceful, without any shyness of a woman, and her eyes were cold. Although there were some waves in her eyes, it was because of what she heard, not because of Chu Liyue in front of her. This kind of understanding made Chu Liyue very uncomfortable. Didn't those misses from aristocratic families all be delicate and shy when they saw him? I do know something, but I can't tell Fifth Miss Xiao for nothing. Chu Liyue said in a deep voice. What do you want, Your Highness? Xiao Wanru asked. She knew that Chu Liyue had a plan, but she did not know what he wanted. He took great pains to bring Qi Rongji here, so he must have a big request. When the former heir of Duke Xing left the capital city with Infanta Qinghua, they didn't go to the border, but after receiving a letter from a person on the way, they suddenly changed their direction. The previous direction should be the relatively soft water area, which is almost opposite to the direction of the border. Who made him make such a decision that is contrary to his previous idea? Chu Liyue put down the important news and stared at Xiao Wanru closely. Xiao Wanru's heart palpitated, and her eyes turned a little red. She bit her lip and swallowed the bitterness in her heart. No matter in the last life or this life, she did not know about it, and no one had mentioned it to her. After being reborn, was she really going to get in touch with the truth of what happened to her parents? Chapter 805. Your Highness, do you know anything? Xiao Wanru bit her lip, suppressed her thoughts, and asked. Chu Liyue had been staring at her closely. Looking at her slightly red eyes under her long curly eyelashes, he knew that he had spoken her mind, so his face involuntarily softened. I know something. Your Highness, what do I have to do to make you tell me? Xiao Wanru raised her eyes and asked with a smile with a hint of coldness at the corners of her mouth. She did not avoid his gaze. Since Chu Liyue brought it up at this time, he must have a plan. He came here with such a big force and hit the softest part of her heart. How could he come here for no reason? Chu Liyue did not speak, and his eyes fell on her delicate little face. Her face was slightly pale, but her eyes were red. She was extremely beautiful, and her cherry lips were slightly pursed, which made people feel that she was gentle and stubborn. Her words were even more direct, which was completely inconsistent with her gentle appearance. But this made people feel even more sorry for her. Thinking of her background, she was really pitiful. Her parents had died, and she had been living in a foreign place for many years. She had not been treated as a biological daughter by others and was even almost ruined by others. Now after coming back, although she had returned to the family, she still had not been recognized by the whole Duke Xing's mansion and had been wandering on the edge of Duke Xing's mansion. Everyone knew that the fifth Miss Xiao was the most unfavored person in Duke Xing's mansion. A trace of pity inexplicably appeared in his heart, and the corners of his eyes softened. "Fifth miss, you don't have to work so hard." She was the only one who supported the chief branch of Duke Xing's mansion, and her biological brother was also raised in Great Elder Princess Mansion. After Chu Luiyue finished speaking, his eyes fell on Xiao Wanru's porcelain white face, and there was a trace of deepness in his eyes. Since he saw her in the palace that time, her figure often appeared in his dreams. In the past, when he had a good relationship with Xiao Yanru, he had never thought of Xiao Yanru in his dreams. Now he actually thought of her specifically, which made him involuntarily hold her in his arms. "Your Highness, tell me your conditions." Xiao Wanru frowned. She didn't like the way Chu Luiyue looked at her, as if she was something that belonged to him. Looking into her cold eyes, Chu Luiyue's expression slowly became cold. He said, "Fifth miss, if you marry into my Prince Yu's mansion, I will definitely protect you. I will also help you find out what happened that year and avenge your parents." Chu Luiyue didn't intend to beat around the bush anymore and said bluntly with a smile slowly at the corner of his mouth. Although it was a little cold, his attitude was very clear. He wanted Xiao Wanru to marry into his Prince Yu's mansion. After being stunned for a moment, Xiao Wanru's eyes became colder with a trace of disgust hidden in them. She really hated Chu Luiyue more than others. In the last life, she was killed by Chu Luiyue. Now, he actually said that he wanted her to marry into his Prince Yu's mansion. She didn't know why he was so confident that she would obey him. "Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness, but I will not marry into Prince Yu's mansion." Xiao Wanru raised the corner of her mouth and said sarcastically, "Marry into Prince Yu's mansion?" He didn't even marry anyone. Did he think that she had no status in Duke Xing's mansion, so he wanted to marry her? Even if he wanted to marry her, she would not marry into Prince Yu's mansion, let alone marry him. "But you don't have a good life in Duke Xing's mansion. With my help, people in Duke Xing's mansion won't look down on you anymore. I can even help your brother get the title of Duke Xing." Chu Luiyue really felt strange. He thought that he had thrown such a big bait. Even if Xiao Wanru couldn't figure it out at the moment and didn't agree, she would not refuse him directly. "I won't degrade myself for my brother's title," Xiao Wanru said coldly. She really didn't understand why Chu Luiyue was so confident and felt that she had to rely on him. "How can I degrade myself? Fifth miss, I really want you to follow me. But you also know that although you have a high status now, you don't have the strength. My mother won't agree to me marrying you. This time the consort selection will definitely choose another powerful miss from an aristocratic family. But you don't have to be afraid. In the end, the position of the legal wife will still fall into your hands." Chu Luiyue's voice became softer, but it also made Xiao Wanru more disgusted. He felt that Xiao Wanru would be moved if he said this. He had made it very clear that he only had her in his heart, and he would not let her feel wronged. The current grievance was only temporary. In the end, he would let her see the world hand in hand with him. Xiao Wanru smiled sweetly and shook her head gently. "Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness. I'm afraid I have to refuse you." But Chu Luiyue didn't understand and frowned. "Your Highness, do you mean that I should marry into Prince Yu's mansion first, then drive the legal wife down and go up by myself?" Xiao Wanru tilted her head slightly, looking a little naive. Her eyes, which seemed to be able to speak, were beautiful and charming, which calmed Chu Luiyue down. He nodded and said, "You can think so. Your Highness, I don't have the ability to drive Prince Yu out of the position, so you'd better marry someone else." Xiao Wanru shook her head again. Chu Luiyue didn't understand what she meant. After thinking for a while, he thought that she might feel that she couldn't defeat the legal wife, so he said more straightforwardly, "Don't worry. If you can't do it, I will help you. I will definitely drive the woman who occupies the position of my legal wife out of the position." Her words were straightforward enough and made it very clear that Chu Luiyue felt that Xiao Wanru would definitely be moved. He relaxed a little and waited for Xiao Wanru to agree. "Your Highness, I don't have the ability to agree with this, and I won't drive your legal wife out of the position. My grandma will never agree to let me be a concubine." Xiao Wanru's voice was very light, but there was no hesitation in her words. "As for the thing in your hand, if you can tell me, I will be grateful." But if you are unwilling to tell me, I can only do this. After saying that, Xiao Wanru stood up and bowed sideways to Chu Luiyue, who was sitting in the first seat. She said respectfully but indifferently, if you have nothing to do, please go back first. Miss Qi has been waiting outside for a long time. Was she rejected? With a cold light in his eyes, Chu Luiyue's face darkened. He patted the table, suddenly stood up, and took 2 steps forward to approach Xiao Wanru. Fifth Miss, do you know what you are doing? How could she reject him? Even if he mentioned Ru and Great Elder Princess, he couldn't hide the fact that she had rejected him. Chu Luiyue had never been so wronged by a woman, so he flew into a rage. Xiao Wanru took a step back and lowered her head. She said in a gentle but firm tone, Your Highness, thank you for your kindness. My marriage is decided by my grandma. I'm afraid I can't promise you anything. It was impossible for R and Great Elder Princess to agree to let her granddaughter be a concubine. Although R and Great Elder Princess had no real power, she had a good relationship with the Empress Dowager. If she went to the Empress Dowager to complain, he would be in trouble in the end. Chu Luiyue was so angry that he gritted his teeth, and his eyes almost burst into flames. Looking at Xiao Wanru's long curly eyelashes, he felt hate and annoyed. He felt that women were so unreasonable. There was a better way, but she insisted on contradicting him like this. It was really too much. He wanted to leave, but he was a little reluctant. He stretched out his hand and subconsciously wanted to touch her pink little face. But when his hand was about to touch her, Xiao Wanru took a few steps back. Your Highness. Well, I promise you that I will marry you and make you Princess Yu directly. Is this okay? Xiao Wanru, you have to know that the reason why I give in again and again is that I really cherish you. If it were other women with your current situation, you would at most be a concubine. Chu Luiyue put his hands behind his back and taught Xiao Wanru a lesson with a cold face. Xiao Wanru was so angry that she almost laughed. How could Chu Luiyue be so confident that he thought that she just liked the position of his princess, as if she deliberately put on airs for the position of his princess? She laughed. Although her laughter was light, the two of them still heard it clearly. She slowly raised her head and looked at Chu Luiyue. Her eyes slowly turned cold and she said, Your Highness, don't you like Big Sister? Why do you turn to me now? I heard from Big Sister that you and Big Sister used to be in love. Now that Big Sister doesn't want you, do you turn to me? Her words were merciless. She directly pointed out that Chu Luiyue and Xiao Yanru had an affair and exposed Chu Luiyue's sanctimonious behavior. She raised the corners of her mouth slightly, and it was obvious that she was ridiculing him. Chu Luiyue was stunned and his face froze. Then he almost glared at Xiao Wanru fiercely and said, Fifth Miss, do you know what you are saying? He did not expect that Xiao Wanru would suddenly say such words, nor did he expect that Xiao Wanru actually knew about the relationship between him and Xiao Yanru. For a moment he was ashamed, angry, and ashamed after being exposed. All kinds of emotions mixed together, so that he was so ashamed that his face turned blue. After saying this, he swung his sleeves and turned to leave. There were many beauties in the world, and many of them were tactful beauties. He did not believe that he could not find a more suitable woman for himself except for Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru was very tactless. He would definitely teach her a lesson. Didn't she not want to marry him? Then he would let her marry an unbearable person and see if she still had the courage to say such words in front of him again. Chu Luiyue left angrily and took Qi Rongji, who was outside the door. When the footsteps outside were far away, Yujie put down her tightly clenched fists, and her palms were full of sweat. At that moment, she was really afraid that Prince Yu would take action. His gaze as if he was going to eat her miss made Yujie always vigilant. Didn't Prince Yu always have feelings for First Miss? Why did he have feelings for her miss now? Could it be that Duke Xing's mansion really made Prince Yu so tempted? What should she do now? Prince Yu was angered by Miss and left. Miss, will Prince Yu deal with us? Yujie was a little flustered. They were still in the palace now, and no one knew what would happen. Chapter 806. Chu Luiyue left the Imperial Palace angrily and returned to his mansion. As soon as he sat down in the study, He heard that when Shichi had come, he calmed down a little and asked someone to invite him in. He had originally wanted to see Wen Shichi, and it was just in time for him to come. When Shichi entered the door and saw Chu Luiwei sitting there with a livid face, he didn't know why he was angry, but he didn't care. He took 2 steps forward and saluted, saying, "Your Highness. Yuan Qing, please sit down. I have something to talk to you about." Chu Luiwei restrained the anger on his face and said, when Shichi sat down, and the servant left the study after serving tea. When His Highness and Lord Wen were discussing, no one would be stupid enough to approach them. "Your Highness, please go ahead." When Shichi said, "You go first. How's the matter I asked you to investigate?" Chu Luiwei took a breath in annoyance and suppressed his anger. "There's nothing about the matter I investigated before. We didn't find anything about what happened before. After all, it was something that happened more than 10 years ago. We can't find the person who sent the message at that time. We don't know who told heir of Duke Xing to change his destination and what he went to do. Why did he make such a decision for no reason? This person should not only be familiar with heir of Duke Xing, but also trust it." When Shichi had been helping Chu Luiwei investigate the past of heir of Duke Xing these days, the more he investigated, the more mysterious he felt. Until now, he still had no clue. Chu Luiwei had originally sent someone to ask him to talk about the progress of the investigation, but he found nothing, so he specially made this trip. "If you can't find out the truth, don't investigate it," Chu Luiwei said coldly with a gloomy face. This matter was related to Xiao Wanru. Thinking of Xiao Wanru's attitude just now, he became angrier. After trying to calm down, he said, "Do you think it's good for me to marry the 5th Miss of Duke Xing's mansion?" There were too many twists in his words. When Shichi was stunned for a moment and then said slowly, "Your Highness, do you want to marry the 5th Miss Xiao? She has Ru and Great Elder Princess behind her. Although Ru and Great Elder Princess has no power, her rank is high. Moreover, Imperial Grandmother is quite good to her. Maybe she can say something to her in the future." Chu Luiwei said, "The Empress Dowager never cares about who the throne is going to. Moreover, the Great Elder Princess does not have any real power." When Shichi's voice was gentle, and his handsome face was a little thoughtful as he analyzed the situation calmly. These words seemed to hit Chu Luiwei's Achilles' heel. For a moment, he was so depressed that he couldn't even say a word. After a long time, he said, "If it wasn't for the position of princess consort, she wouldn't be able to enter Prince Yu's mansion to be a concubine. Ben Wang has actually promised her the position of princess consort. I just asked her to wait a little, but she is not willing." Speaking of this, Chu Luiwei was a little annoyed. He had made it clear, which could be considered as expressing his feelings. He had never been so humble in front of a woman, but she didn't appreciate it. Thinking of this, he couldn't bear the anger that he had suppressed just now. On the way back just now, he was also wondering whether his words had made Xiao Wanru unhappy. Otherwise, how could he fail such a sure thing? Thinking about what he had said just now, Chu Luiwei felt that his previous proposal had made Xiao Wanru unhappy, so she said the words that embarrassed everyone. Was she so angry because he hadn't promised her the position of princess consort in the beginning? Chu Luiwei took it for granted that Xiao Wanru's refusal was also because he felt that his offer was excellent. Not only would he help Xiao Wanru's younger brother seize the title of Duke Xing's mansion in the future, but he would also help Xiao Wanru find out what had happened to her parents. If someone framed her parents, he would also help her. Even if Ru and Great Princess wanted to find out about this kind of thing, no one could do it. Based on these 2 points, Xiao Wanru had no reason to refuse. The reason why she refused now was also because of the order in which he had spoken before. 5th Miss Xiao wants the position of princess consort, but not the position of concubine? When Shichi frowned and asked with an unpredictable look. I've talked to her before, and that's what I mean. Yuan Qing, do you think it's good for me to marry her? Can I marry her? Chu Luiwei nodded. When Shichi fell silent. After a long while, he raised the corners of his mouth and inexplicably said with a sarcastic smile, since she wants the position of Princess Yu, let her get what she wants. He paused here and said, but I'm afraid that it's hard for your highness to explain to concubine Da and the emperor. When Shichi reminded Chu Luiyue frowned deeply. It was indeed a little difficult to marry Xiao Wanru at once. He had impulsively wanted to go to the empress to propose marriage, but Chu Luqin rejected him. Later, when he went to the empress, he mentioned it, but the empress avoided it and ignored it. After that, he slowly realized that he could take Xiao Wanru as a concubine first. A concubine was also on the imperial certificate, so it was not a disgrace to her identity. As for the position of Princess Yu in the future, he would not disagree. What if I insist on marrying her? Chu Luiyue still didn't give up. If your highness insists on marrying her, concubine Da will be furious and think that your highness has failed to live up to her painstaking efforts. The emperor has a better daughter from an aristocratic family to give to you. If you decide on your own, the emperor will be unhappy. When Shichi calmly stated a fact. Chu Luiyue was very clear about concubine Da's painstaking efforts. At this time, it was best for him to listen to the emperor about his marriage. If he married Xiao Wanru, it was not in line with the emperor's wishes and would inevitably provoke the emperor's anger. At this critical time, he couldn't make any mistakes in marriage. Then she wants to be the princess. What should I do? Chu Liu asked. Hearing Chu Liu's repeated words, when Shichi felt a little angry for no reason in his heart. He twitched the corner of his mouth, and there was a little disdain in his light smile. It turned out that she was just SOSO. She had been close to him before. When she first arrived in the capital, she deliberately approached him, even investigated him, and reminded him of the people around him. For this, he was grateful. Thinking about it now, he realized that she had taken a fancy to him at that time. As the daughter of Ningyuan army general, she had taken a fancy to him, the prime minister's son. Now that she had a high status, she no longer took a fancy to him, but to Prince Yu. She even asked Prince Yu for the position of princess. In vain, he had thought that she was a good girl who knew shame and etiquette, but it turned out that he had misjudged her. Inexplicably, there was a burst of anger in his heart. This anger came very abruptly, as if he had been betrayed. He only felt that there was a rush of anger in his heart, and he had to vent it out. Your Highness, if you really want her to be a concubine, you have to make a good plan. If she can't be the princess because of her own reasons, and great elder princess won't blame you. Moreover, she will think that your Highness is affectionate and righteous. As for the Empress and concubine Da, you have no intention of disobeying them. He blurted out these words. When he finished speaking, he suddenly felt that the corner of his eyes twitched. He reached out to rub the corner of his eyes and closed his eyes. He was very tired, a kind of exhaustion from the bottom of his heart. He subconsciously covered his chest with his hands. At this moment, he actually felt very uncomfortable. Do you have a good idea? Chu Liuyue's eyes lit up. Of course, this was the best way to make Xiao Wanru willingly marry into Prince Yu's mansion as a concubine, and great elder princess would thank him. When Shichi lowered his head and clenched his hands in his sleeves. He couldn't tell what he felt in his heart, but he felt stuffy and out of breath. Yuan Qing, do you have a good idea? Chu Liu asked. He had never wanted a woman so much. Since he had taken a fancy to her, he could only marry her into his mansion. When Shichi suppressed the irritation in his heart and said, the beauties are now in the palace. The palace guard of Chushio Palace should not be too strict, right? Although Chushio Palace is the main palace in the palace, there is no real master in it. Now there are beauties living in it, so it is not strictly guarded. Chu Liu said. When Shichi had always been strong-willed. He suppressed a trace of worry in his heart and continued to ask, Your Highness, do you have a way to put some men's things in 5th Miss Xiao's room? Put men's things in her room? Chu Liu thought for a while and nodded. This was not a difficult thing. The beauties learned etiquette and palace rules together in the morning, so it was indeed possible to find someone to put things in Xiao Wanru's room. It can be done and no one will know. But what should we do next? Ask the nanny in charge to check the room and you can find men's things. Your Highness, if you appear at this time and you can make this thing your own, it will be a good thing. When Shichi said, in fact, the first part of this matter was not difficult. If she wanted to bribe a few people from Chushio Palace, she didn't even need to say that Chu Luiwei had sent them. She just needed to say that they were instructed by other beauties in the palace. It was impossible to find out that Chu Luiwei was involved. It was not easy to find out the next part of the investigation and coincidentally help them. However, it was not impossible as long as it was handled properly. If Chu Luiwei said that the man's things in Xiao Wanru's room were his, he could save Xiao Wanru and prevent her from entering Prince Yu's mansion. And Great Elder Princess would even be grateful to Chu Luiwei. Good idea. Chu Luiwei slapped the table and laughed. He only felt that the sullenness in his heart suddenly disappeared. But Yuan Qing, please help me make a plan for the specific matters. Your Highness, if you really have an idea, you can indeed make a plan. But you have to make a good plan for this matter and never let anyone find out. When Shichi felt more and more annoyed, he stood up, cupped his hands to Chu Luiwei and said, Your Highness, I still have something to do, so I have to go first. If you want, I will help you make a plan first. Chu Luiwei wanted to stop when Shichi, but seeing that he looked a little upset, he thought that he had something important to do, so he could only nod and say, Okay, then you can go back first. If you are free tomorrow, you can come to discuss it. Chu Luiwei felt that this matter was not urgent, but he did not expect that it would come to a conclusion that night. The Empress Dowager's decree arrived at Duke Xing's mansion, and Chu Luiwei and Xiao Wanru were granted a marriage. That night, Xiao Wanru came out of Chushio Palace and returned to Duke Xing's mansion. Chapter 807. Xiao Wanru returned to Duke Xing's mansion that night. She and Chu Luchen had been engaged, so it was meaningless to stay in the palace. The Empress Dowager also wanted her to go back to the mansion first. That night, a small sedan chair went out of the palace gate. There was already a carriage of Duke Xing's mansion waiting outside the palace gate. Xiao Wanru got on the carriage and returned to Duke Xing's mansion. When she arrived at Duke Xing's mansion, it was already late, but the gate was brightly lit. Xiao Wanru's carriage turned into the gate of the mansion, and the lights outside were mostly extinguished. Xiao Wanru got off the carriage, and Nanny Yu had been waiting outside. She stepped forward with a smile and said, "Fifth Miss, old madam has been waiting for you in the mansion for a long time. Please come with me." Xiao Wanru nodded and took Yujie to the Chuntang courtyard where old madam lived. The Chuntang courtyard was also brightly lit. All the servant girls and old maids who saw Xiao Wanru were respectful. There were 4 misses who entered the palace for the consort selection, and now only the 5th miss could come back safely and successfully be selected. Even though they used to look down on the 5th miss, they did not dare to be presumptuous at this time. Old madam sat in the main room with a happy face. When she saw Xiao Wanru come in, her eyes turned red. She wiped the tears at the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief, nodded and said kindly, "It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. 5th miss, before you came back, old madam had been missing you. She was afraid that something might have happened to you in the palace. The 4 misses of our family didn't go well in the consort selection this time. If something happened to the 5th miss, old madam would be very worried." Nanny Yu said with her eyes turning red, as if she really missed Xiao Wanru as much as old madam did. "Don't worry, old madam. I'm fine." Xiao Wanru answered softly. "It's good that you're fine. Nothing is more convenient in the palace than at home. It seems that you've lost weight." Old madam sighed and asked Xiao Wanru to sit down beside her. "Don't be so distant. Although you've been living in the Yuhui nunnery before, you're still my granddaughter. Don't treat me like an outsider and call me old madam." "Yes, 5th miss should call her grandmother. We can't be estranged just because we haven't been together for a long time." Nanny Yu also nodded repeatedly and sighed with emotion. Looking at the master and the servant, Xiao Wanru only felt funny. She had called her old madam for a long time. She hadn't said anything before, but now she became pretentious and said that they were estranged. She had been estranged for a long time. "Yes, grandma," Xiao Wanru said softly. It was not the time to argue about this. Moreover, it was just a title. When old madam didn't care about it, she had called it this way. Now it was mentioned again and again, so she couldn't turn a blind eye to it. "What happened to your eldest sister?" Why did she suddenly enter the palace? When did she contact the emperor? Old Madam wiped away her tears and asked. So this was the most important topic. Xiao Wanru sneered in her heart, rolled her watery eyes, and said, Grandma, this matter, actually, Xiao Wanru said as she looked at both sides. Old Madam understood and waved to the people on both sides. The servant girls and old maids on both sides left one by one, leaving only Nanny Yu and Yu Jie to stand behind them to serve. After all the servants left, Old Madam's face darkened and she asked, Tell me, what happened to First Miss? How could such a thing happen to her eldest granddaughter, who had always valued etiquette the most? In the past, Madam of the Jiang family had repeatedly said that Ru would either marry Prince Yu or Prince Zhou in the future. How could she marry the emperor and take the initiative to seduce the emperor? When she heard this from her second son, she almost couldn't believe it was true and fainted at once. After she woke up with great difficulty, she burst into tears. She had cultivated her eldest granddaughter for so many years, but she was ruined in such a way. It was like gouging out her heart. How could she not be devastated? Eldest sister used drugs. She wanted to make Prince Exant faint. Xiao Wanru thought for a moment and said slowly, I didn't expect the emperor to come. Her words were short but direct. Hearing her words, Empress Dowager's face turned pale and her hands and feet trembled. She had thought that Xiao Yanru was really wronged, but now it seemed that it was not the case. Therefore, her eldest granddaughter was not wronged. She did do it but accidentally made a mistake. The royal father and son, no matter who they were, couldn't be schemed against by others. Why did she turn to Prince Xian? No, there are still Prince Yu and Prince Zhou, right? There was no one else in the room. Although Old Madam was afraid, she said it directly. Xiao Yanru had never taken a fancy to Prince Exan, so how could she seduce Prince Exan? Prince Yu and Prince Zhou fought because of eldest sister, and they said. Xiao Wanru paused for a moment. What did they say? Old Madam asked anxiously. Something had happened to Xiao Yanru before, and she originally knew something about it. The news from the palace said that Prince Yu and Prince Zhou had a dispute because of Xiao Yanru. Xiao Yanru accidentally hurt herself when trying to mediate, so she was given the honor to rest in the Empress's palace and be sent out of the palace when she was almost recovered. Unexpectedly, it turned out to be a fight. It was not a good thing for two brothers to fight over a woman in ordinary families, let alone in the palace. Although Old Madam asked this question, she was desperate in her heart. Her eldest granddaughter was really useless now. Prince Yu said that Prince Zhou and eldest sister had an affair and wanted to plot against him in the past. Prince Zhou said that Prince Yu and eldest sister had been in touch for a long time for him. The emperor was furious and wanted to punish eldest sister, so eldest sister committed suicide to apologize. Fortunately, she was saved. At that time, it happened in the empress's Fengyi palace. In order not to let others know and spread the scandal, eldest sister stayed in the Fengyi palace to recuperate. Xiao Wanru stated. This was the truth. There were so many things in it, and they were all things that she didn't know. Old Madam's lips trembled twice, and her face was almost pale. She tried to say something, but she felt dizzy and her vision suddenly darkened. She heard a voice calling her from far and near. Fifth Miss, please save Old Madam. Seeing that she couldn't wake Old Madam up, Nanny Yu hurriedly turned around and pulled Xiao Wanru's hand, trying to pull her to Old Madam to see the reason. Do you still have the old medicine? If you do, give Grandma 2 pills. Xiao Wanru said calmly. Old Madam had made the old medicine, and she didn't want to take it. If it's still not good, it's better to go to the palace to ask an imperial physician. At that time, she did it to save people in an emergency, but now she didn't want to have too much to do with Old Madam. Moreover, she could see that Old Madam was obviously not as ill as before. The medicine was beside her, and she would be fine after taking 2 pills. What happened to Xiao Yanru had happened. Xiao Wanru didn't believe that Old Madam hadn't guessed it. She might not know the specific things, but the final outcome had been determined. Old Madam, who had experienced so many ups and downs, couldn't be ignorant of it. She couldn't stand it and fainted at once. Nanny Yu hurriedly went to get the medicine and fed water and medicine to Old Madam. Only then did Old Madam slowly recover. She opened her eyes and looked around, revealing a kind of powerlessness and sadness of an old woman. After asking Nanny Yu to help her up, she looked at Xiao Wanru and felt extremely sad. She reached out and patted the edge of the bed, asking Xiao Wanru to sit down. Then she said slowly, "Your big sister has been raised by my side since she was a child, so I naturally treat her differently. When she was a child, she liked to dress up as a man. She looked like your father. At that time, your father was not around. When I looked at her, I felt that I saw your father when he was a child. So I gradually fell in love with her." Speaking of this, old madam burst into tears. Nanny Yu hurriedly handed her a handkerchief and comforted her. "Old madam, don't be sad. I know you. If First Miss hadn't dressed up as a boy and looked so similar to Child, you wouldn't have missed Child and cried from time to time. Fortunately, First Miss was by your side, so you slowly got over it." Xiao Wanru lowered her head, looked at the floor in front of her, and raised the corners of her mouth silently. These words were said to her. Was she trying to explain to her why old madam favored Xiao Yenru so much? At the moment of her rebirth, she didn't care who old madam favored. The bloody facts in the last life had made her see through old madam. What was more, after her rebirth, old madam showed no mercy to her when she attacked her. The so-called affection for her father had long disappeared after being schemed against again and again. "Grandma, don't be sad. It's all over." She raised her head and smiled gently with a little tiredness. Her face was a little pale, but her face was soft. "Well, don't cry. I just think that your big sister has done such a stupid thing in the end after being raised by me for so many years. However, you have never been raised by me, but you are obedient and sensible. I neglected you in the past, but I won't do it in the future. Now your third aunt is in charge of the mansion. If you need anything, you can ask someone to go to your third aunt. If you can't save face, you can come to me." Old madam said with a kind face and seemed to care about her very much. This would only make Xiao Wanru feel more disgusted, but she didn't show it on her face. She still nodded softly, neither too enthusiastic nor too cold. After the grandmother and granddaughter talked intimately for a while, old madam considerately asked Xiao Wanru to go back to have a rest. After coming out of old madam's courtyard, Xiao Wanru returned to her own courtyard. The courtyard had already been prepared. After freshening up, Xiao Wanru sat down at ease and had a sumptuous dinner prepared for her in the mansion early. This was the most sumptuous meal she had had since she entered Duke Xing's mansion. It could be seen that her master had specially instructed her to have it. After eating, she sat under the window and wrote a piece of paper. After it dried, she put the ring she had picked up before into it and wrapped it up. It was time to settle accounts. What belonged to her should belong to her. She was unwilling to give it up at all. Chapter 808. In her last life, she was schemed against. Not only did she give up everything she had, but she also lost her life. Now that Bloodthirsty had returned, how could she leave them any chance? The light outside the window was flickering, which seemed to come from a far place. It was already late, and most of the lights in the mansion had been turned off, but the light was still on in one area. It seemed to be a tall building. That should be the outer courtyard. How could there be someone in the outer courtyard at this time? Xiao Wanru narrowed her eyes and looked around, but she didn't care. Duke Xing's mansion was strange to her, so strange that she still didn't know the layout of Duke Xing's mansion even though she had been in it for a period of time. "What's over there? Why is there still light?" Xiao Wanru pointed casually and said. Yu Jie came over to take a look and also shook her head. "It seems to be in the outer courtyard. I don't know. That direction seems to be the Deputy Prime Minister's mansion. Could it be that it's not our mansion but the Deputy Prime Minister's mansion?" Xiao Wanru thought for a while and laughed at herself. She was not familiar with Duke Xing's mansion in this life, nor was she familiar with Deputy Prime Minister's mansion in the last life. In the last life, although she married Wen Shiqi, she basically served Wen Shiqi in his courtyard and rarely went out, so she didn't know some places in Deputy Prime Minister's mansion at all. But that place really looked like it was in Deputy Prime Minister's mansion. The light in the distance was flickering, and she couldn't see it clearly. Moreover, it suddenly went out, and the whole courtyard was dark. Tomorrow morning, find a way to give this to Nanny Gao, who is serving Grandma, and ask her to give it to Grandma. Xiao Wanru collected her thoughts and turned her head to give an order. Miss, will Nanny Gao come tomorrow? Yujia looked at the ring rolled up in the paper on the desk and asked in surprise. Yes, Grandma will definitely come to have a look tomorrow. Xiao Wanru nodded. Only a few people knew the news of her bestowal of marriage today. Tomorrow, everyone would know it. Her grandma would definitely come to have a look and support her so that no one would look down on her. Although she was not valued by Duke Xing's mansion, her maternal grandmother still doted on her. At this time, her maternal grandmother immediately stood behind her, which represented her maternal grandmother's attitude. A few days ago, Duke Xing's mansion had kept the first miss, who was said to be likely to become the prince's wife, in the Imperial palace and made her a treasure forest. This seemed to be a favor from the royal family, but in fact, it was a slap in the face. As the eldest daughter of lineal descent in Duke Xing's mansion, she was just a treasure forest. It was not only a slap in Xiao Yanru's face, but also the face of the entire Duke Xing's mansion. When Duke Xing went to the imperial court, he felt ashamed. Many of his colleagues, who had been close to him, also became much colder, and some even mentioned it to him with a faint smile. No matter how steady Xiao Jing was, he had been living like a year recently. Fortunately, he always had a smile on his face. Even if he didn't smile much now, he inexplicably made people feel very gentle. Many people secretly guessed that Duke Xing's mansion was going to decline and that Xiao Jing would also be in big trouble. Although Duke Xing had been popular in the past, he had made many political enemies in secret. Seeing that he was losing power, many people were secretly happy, and some people would say some sarcastic words in a sarcastic tone. Unexpectedly, in just a few days, the feng shui immediately changed. Early in the morning, everyone knew that the Empress Dowager had issued a decree yesterday to grant the fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion to Prince Chen as Princess Chen. Who was Prince Chen? Prince Chen's identity was the most special. He was the legitimate son of the former emperor and the only son. He was almost the crown prince of the former emperor. Later, the throne inexplicably fell into the hands of the current emperor. It was not impossible for brothers to inherit the throne, but it was more reasonable for the current emperor not to pass the throne to his biological son. Moreover, this biological son was the legitimate son of the former emperor. In history, there were cases in which the empress inherited the throne with a young prince in her arms. Even if the prince was only born for one day, it could not be ignored. However, after the death of the former emperor, the emperor took out the former emperor's posthumous edict, saying that it was the will of the former emperor. He didn't want to see the country fall into the hands of an ignorant child, so he wanted to pass the throne to the current emperor. At that time, the emperor had actually been powerful. Even without this posthumous edict, he had the ability to snatch the throne. Now with this posthumous edict, it was more justifiable. After killing several ministers who had expressed their views forcefully, the emperor ascended the throne and granted the former emperor's legitimate son the title of Prince Chen. In order to show his favor, he allowed him to be ranked as a prince together with his son, and he was the third prince. The other princes, such as Prince Yu and Prince Zhou, were conferred the title of prince after they grew up. Only he had been conferred the title of prince early, opened a mansion, and granted him the former Nangong to live. The Nangong was closely connected to the Imperial Palace, which had the same meaning as the East Palace. If it weren't for the fact that Prince Chen's health was really poor later, everyone would suspect that the emperor intended to pass the throne to him. Of course, everyone also thought that this was just on the surface. In fact, it was unlikely to be true. Later, everyone was guessing when Prince Chen would die. The existence of Prince Chen was an eyesore to the emperor. No one could keep such a son of the former emperor by his side, reminding him that he had not obtained the throne properly at that time. But to everyone's surprise, the emperor was very kind to Prince Chen, even more than the other princes. Not only did he treat him well, but also the Empress Dowager. They all doted on Prince Chen wholeheartedly, so that although Prince Chen was in poor health, he had survived to the present, and now it seemed that he had recovered a lot. He could also hold on until the end of the court session. Although he was still sitting in the chair, he felt much better. Of course, it was just much better. It seemed that something bad might happen at any time. It was basically impossible for him to marry and have children. Although it was said that the consort selection was for Prince Chin, everyone thought that the possibility was not very high. Prince Chin was in poor health. If he married again, it was hard to say how long he could live. No matter whose daughter married him, she would not have a good ending. But even if she did not have a good ending, she was still Prince Chen's wife. She had a noble status and might be favored by the emperor and the empress dowager. If she could really give birth to a son or a daughter, she would almost have no worries for the rest of her life. Of course, this was just a guess. Prince Chen was tired even to listen to the court affairs. The so-called giving birth and raising children was just a thought and could not be taken seriously. Everyone knew that Prince Chen was in poor health and might not live long. But it could not deny the emperor's affection for Prince Chen. Marrying the fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion to Prince Chen showed that the emperor attached great importance to Duke Xing's mansion. Therefore, the colleagues around Xiao Jing of Duke Xing became enthusiastic again. After the court session, they all asked him about this matter and congratulated him again and again. They were very happy. Xiao Jing also put on a smile on his face and spoke politely to his colleagues. But he saw Prince Yu walk past them, wrapped in coldness. Several ministers couldn't help stepping aside and looking at each other. They didn't understand who had offended Prince Yu. They thought about it carefully. There was nothing important today in the court session. Only Commandery Prince Qing said some things that he had found out that day. Could it be related to Prince Yu? After Prince Yu was Prince Zhou. Although these two princes seemed to get along well on the surface, they were actually not. In the past, when they went out of the court session, they often came one after another, so everyone was used to it. As for the last prince, Prince Qin, because of his poor health, he walked very slowly. Everyone could understand that he was the last one. Sometimes Prince Qin was very indifferent and even a little gloomy, but most of the time he looked very gentle and elegant. In addition, he was the legitimate son of the former emperor. In fact, some ministers in the court were secretly on his side. Seeing him come out, many people made way for him. Chu Luchun seemed to be in a good mood. With a slight smile in his handsome eyes, he nodded at the ministers who made way for him, and then walked out with Xiao Xuanzi, who was guarding outside the hall. Prince Qin should like this marriage. Everyone thought so. For Prince Qin, it had long been said that the Empress Dowager wanted to marry a princess for him, either to continue the family line or to make Prince Chen's mansion more powerful, but it had never happened. It was said that Prince Chen was unwilling to marry a princess. Now he was willing to marry a princess for the sake of fifth Miss Xiao. From this point of view, the emperor was not completely disappointed with Duke Xing's mansion. For the sake of Prince Chen, the emperor would not do anything to Duke Xing's mansion. Thinking of this, everyone became more and more enthusiastic about Duke Xing. Even a few ministers who didn't talk much with each other in the past came over to join in the fun and congratulate him. The ministers laughed and talked together and walked out of the palace. In Duke Xing's mansion, Ru, great elder princess, came early in the morning. When she arrived at Duke Xing's mansion, she first went to visit Old Madam. Old Madam greeted Ru, great elder princess, with a smile. This time, the atmosphere seemed to be less tense. They looked like two much calmer old ladies. Since they got married, they had been in a hostile position. It was rare for them to sit down so calmly. Seeing such a calm and great elder princess, Old Madam felt inexplicably scared. Today, great elder princess was so kind that her eyelids kept twitching. She always felt that something bad would happen, so she became more and more cautious when dealing with it. Great elder princess took a sip of tea and put down the teacup in her hand. She glanced around and asked with a smile, "I heard that the third madam of your mansion is in charge now. Why don't I see her now?" "Third madam is in poor health. I asked her to deal with affairs in her courtyard." Old Madam also put down the teacup in her hand and answered with a smile. "Zhuozhua has been married to Prince Qin. Time is a little tight. Your mansion only needs to sort out Qinghua's dowry at that time and give half to Zhuozhua, the other half to Hao, and I will add the rest." The great elder princess stopped asking about the third madam and looked at Old Madam with burning eyes. His words made old Madam feel uncomfortable all over. Chapter 809. Infanta Qinghua had a dowry certificate, and the dowry was not small. It was the emperor who granted the marriage, so she naturally got married with a dowry of 5 kilometers. The palace also added a lot of dowry. This dowry was the first in the capital city. However, after Infanta Qinghua left, the second branch was in charge. Old Madam really did not dare to ask how much dowry was left. In fact, not only the second branch, but also herself. After Infanta Qinghua died, Old Madam divided up Infanta Qinghua's dowry. Now there was not much left in the warehouse. Basically, almost all the good ones were divided. She had some, and the second branch had some. But it was not as good as the dowry of 5 kilometers for Infanta Qinghua. The second branch did not have much dowry when Infanta Qinghua got married. The Jiang family was not a very rich aristocratic family. Moreover, the Jiang family had been raised in Duke Xing's mansion for a reason. Old Madam coughed in a low voice and said, "How can we ask Great Elder Princess to do this? The 5th daughter is the miss of our Duke Xing's mansion, so she should follow the rules of Duke Xing's mansion. Moreover, she is going to marry Prince Qin. Of course, our mansion should give her a generous dowry." Giving a generous dowry was originally her real intention. Xiao Wanru married Prince Qin, and Duke Xing's mansion recovered at this time. Old Madam did not dare to neglect this matter. But it was just a generous dowry, which was different from the dowry of 5 kilometers that Infanta Qinghua had prepared for her. Old Madam meant that she would prepare a new dowry for Xiao Wanru, and it would be a dowry that would not make people feel that it was poor, but it had nothing to do with the dowry of Infanta Qinghua. Perhaps there were some things in Infanta Qinghua's dowry, but not all of them. She felt that Ruian Great Elder Princess would definitely agree with her, and she had also expressed her intention to make friends with Xiao Wanru. Unexpectedly, Ruian Great Elder Princess's face darkened and she said, "What do you mean, Old Madam? Why don't you give Qing'er's dowry to Zhuozhuo? Hao is a boy, so he and Zhuozhuo can get half of the dowry. It's not that we don't give it to 5th Miss, but that our mansion will add some more," Old Madam said tactfully. After Xiao Yanru's incident, it was inconvenient for her to confront Ru and Great Elder Princess head-on. "Thank you, Old Madam. I happen to be here today. Please ask the 3rd Madam of your mansion to come and check Qinghua's dowry. Then I will divide it into 2 and divide it for them, so that they won't quarrel with each other in the future." And Great Elder Princess nodded and said naturally. Old Madam opened her mouth, suppressed the anger in her heart, and explained gently, "Great Elder Princess, I mean that we will add more dowry to Infanta Qinghua's dowry." Infanta Qinghua's dowry will be given to Infanta Qinghua and her brother. But Great Elder Princess, it seems that we have done something wrong to Infanta Qinghua's dowry when you come here and divide the dowry. What a joke! Old Madam's tone was completely different from that of Old Madam to Wu and Great Elder Princess in the past. It seemed that Old Madam had changed into another person. She also spoke in a gentle voice, as if she didn't want to quarrel with Wu and Great Elder Princess. If it was in the past, Wu and Great Elder Princess would not go too far when Old Madam showed weakness. But when she thought of what Nanny Gao said on the note and the ring, Great Elder Princess was furious. For so many years, she had only paid attention to Haoer's affairs, but she did not expect that Duke Xing's mansion was so shallow that they even coveted their daughter-in-law's dowry. Haoer was the only one in the eldest branch, and he was raised in Duke Xing's mansion and was close to Old Madam. As long as Haoer was happy, Great Elder Princess would not go too far. She had thought that Old Madam would not use Qinghua's dowry. With Old Madam watching it and Haoer taking it in the future, Duke Xing's mansion would not do such a thing. She did not expect that Duke Xing's mansion not only did it, but also went too far. Great Elder Princess remembered that ring, which was specially added by her, just because Qinghua said she liked this ring. She did not expect that now it was wrapped in a piece of paper and sent to her. As long as she thought about how this old woman had not only harmed her daughter and son-in-law, but had also embezzled her daughter's dowry and even had the intention to raise her grandson into a cripple, the Great Elder Princess could not help but burn with anger. Thinking of what her granddaughter had said to her in the letter, Great Elder Princess suppressed her anger. However, she could not show a happy expression on her face. Old Madam, I just want to see Qinghua's dowry. It seemed that she had to see the dowry today. Great Elder Princess, this is not polite. Old Madam said with a smile on her face. She could not stand it. Not polite? I just want to see the dowry I sent to my daughter. Is it not polite? Could it be that Duke Xing's mansion has used this batch of dowry? Great Elder Princess snorted coldly and looked at Old Madam's face sharply. Duke Xing's mansion hates my daughter marrying into Duke Xing's mansion, but at the same time, they use my daughter's dowry with a clear conscience. How can there be such a cheap thing in this world? Even if my daughter is gone, there are still Zhuozhuo and Hao. It is not your turn to deal with the dowry. The more and Great Elder Princess said, the angrier she became. She suddenly stood up and stared at Old Madam coldly. Let's go to the palace and reason with the Empress Dowager. Let's say that you have coveted Qinghua's dowry and Zhuozhuo's dowry. Let's see how the Empress Dowager will deal with it. Seeing that she actually wanted to pull her, Old Madam panicked. She hurriedly stepped back and said anxiously, Great Elder Princess, just say it. Why do you need to do it? If I don't do it, will your Duke Xing's mansion return it? Great Elder Princess said sternly. Great Elder Princess, don't slander me. Don't talk nonsense about this kind of thing without evidence. Even in front of the Empress Dowager, I will say the same. Is it wrong for our mansion to add some dowry for the fifth daughter? How can you say such nonsense? Old Madam was also angry and said coldly to Great Elder Princess. Her words also sounded reasonable. In front of the Empress Dowager, she only needed to insist on saying so. Old Madam secretly made up her mind. Old Madam, let me ask you again. Is my daughter's dowry in the warehouse? Great Elder Princess pressed. Of course it is in Qinghua's own warehouse. If you don't believe it, you can ask the supervisor to come over and ask. At that time, Infanta Qinghua left, but the supervisor was sent by your mansion as a dowry. Great Elder Princess should trust the people in your mansion very much. Old Madam said coldly. In fact, she had prepared for some things long ago. She was afraid that and Great Elder Princess would come to make trouble after hearing something. Bring her here. And Great Elder Princess said coldly and sat down again. Old Madam breathed a sigh of relief and winked at Nanny Yu. Nanny Yu nodded and went outside to call the old maid who guarded Infanta Qinghua's private warehouse. The old maid came very quickly and arrived soon. After bowing to Great Elder Princess and Old Madam, she stood aside. Great Elder Princess looked at the old maid up and down and did not recognize her. However, Nanny Gao whispered a few words in her ear, letting her know that this old maid was indeed Infanta Qinghua's dowry. Her whole family was married to Infanta Qinghua, and she followed Infanta Qinghua to Duke Xing's mansion. However, after staying in Duke Xing's mansion for so many years, she had long forgotten who her old master was. However, she knew it from her indifferent face to Great Elder Princess. Are you Qinghua's servant or Duke Xing's mansion servant? Great Elder Princess's cold eyes fell on the old maid, which made the old maid feel scared. She hurriedly lowered her head and said, Great Elder Princess, I am Infanta Qinghua's servant. I came here with Infanta Qinghua. So, your indenture contract is still with Qinghua? And Great Elder Princess asked again. This question made the old maid shiver. Of course, her indenture contract was not with the first branch and had been taken over by the second branch. However, she did not dare to say this and could only nod. Old Madam, Qinghua's things are still with her, right? Let me see how many indenture contracts she has with her servants. If they are not with her, we will deal with them as escaped servants. And Great Elder Princess ignored the old maid and turned to Old Madam and said coldly. The old maid's face immediately turned pale. If she was treated as an escaped servant, she would be sentenced. For a moment, she looked at Old Madam with pleading eyes. Old Madam coughed twice in a low voice and said unhappily, Great Elder Princess, Qinghua has been gone for so many years. Even if we find the indenture contracts of the servants she brought at that time, it is unlikely that we can find them in a short time. You have to let us sort out Qinghua's belongings first. We can't make a mess because we don't have them for the time being. Old Madam meant to delay it for a while. After all, Ruian Great Elder Princess was not a member of Duke Xing's mansion. She couldn't keep an eye on Duke Xing's mansion all day long. After delaying it again and again, she would disappear. Lost? Great Elder Princess said coldly. Not lost. Maybe we can't find them for a while. Old Madam coughed again. In this case, take the servants brought by Qinghua at that time. Let's go to the government office to file a case and buy a new indenture contract for them. And Great Elder Princess said firmly. After the new indenture contract was bought, these people would certainly return to the hands of Great Elder Princess. At that time, Great Elder Princess could only decide whether they were alive or dead. Even Old Madam could not say anything about it. The old maid was so shaken that she almost couldn't stand, and her eyes became more and more eager. Infanta Qinghua came here with her dowry. After so many years, few of them were loyal. They had surrendered to Duke Xing's mansion early and became the servants of the second branch of the Jiang family. How could they be willing to surrender to Great Elder Princess's mansion? Moreover, Great Elder Princess came aggressively. At first glance, they knew that she was here to denounce them. If Great Elder Princess knew the inside story, they were afraid that they would even lose their lives. Great Elder Princess, it's not that we can't find them. We just haven't found them for a while. Great Elder Princess, why are you so aggressive? Is it because you are dissatisfied with the fifth daughter's marriage that you make such a big noise and let the people in the capital see the fifth daughter as a joke? Old Madam became tough and said coldly. At this time she had to be tough. If she blindly obeyed Great Elder Princess, there would really be a big problem. Infanta Qinghua's servants were already the servants of Duke Xing's mansion. They also knew something about Duke Xing's mansion. If they were returned to the hands of Great Elder Princess would inevitably find many problems. She would not return these people. Chapter 8:10. The atmosphere between the two of them immediately became tense. Neither of them gave in. Great Elder Princess suddenly smiled, took out a ring from her bosom, and put it on the table. Old Madam, I picked this up at the gate of your courtyard when I entered the mansion. Seeing Great Elder Princess suddenly calm down, Old Madam had a bad feeling. Her eyes involuntarily fell on the ring in front of her, and she was inexplicably flustered. There was a dark red gem in the ring, surrounded by a circle of fine pearls, and a piece of red stamen in the white jade, like a simple but extremely gorgeous flower. She looked at it for a while but did not recognize it. She raised her head and looked at Great Elder Princess with a blank face. She had seen a lot of jewelry, but she only felt that the ring in front of her was a little familiar, but she could not remember where she saw it. She frowned tightly. Old Madam, why don't you pick it up and have a look? Great Elder Princess raised the corner of her mouth and said sarcastically. Old Madam reached out, picked up the ring, and looked at it carefully. When she saw the mark inside clearly, her face changed dramatically. Old Madam, can't you recognize that this is a thing made by the palace? This kind of thing made by the palace will have a picture book when Qinghua married here. I'm afraid that the one in your mansion has been lost. But it doesn't matter. I have it here. If you don't believe it, you can go to the palace to check. This kind of thing made by the palace is also recorded in the palace. Great Elder Princess calmly reminded Old Madam. Old Madam's hands trembled, and she tried to steady them. She raised her head, and her face became pale. What do you mean, Great Elder Princess? Old Madam, I also want to ask you, what do you mean? You said that Qinghua's dowry is in her private vault, and you found an old maid from nowhere and said that she is Qinghua's maid. Qinghua has been gone for so many years. Even if she is her maid, she may have been trained by you. Now I want to open Qinghua's private vault to have a look. I have reason to suspect that Qinghua's private vault has been embezzled by your Duke Xing's mansion. The ring is clear evidence. Great Elder Princess said in an imposing manner. The ring made by the palace should fall on the edge of Old Madam's yard. It can be seen that Qinghua's things have already been lost. I don't know if they are all in Old Madam's private vault. With the evidence, the great elder princess became even more unyielding. The ring given by her granddaughter was indeed a dowry for her daughter. Not to mention that her daughter lost her life, even her dowry was swallowed by Duke Xing's mansion. Great elder princess wished she could come over and slap old madam hard. It was all because of this old beggar. If it wasn't for her, her daughter would be fine, and there wouldn't be so many things happening to her. It was fine that this old beggar didn't repent, but she actually caused such trouble. She raised a crippled grandson, mistreated her granddaughter, and now she actually dared to do such a thing. Old madam put down her hand heavily, and her face turned blue, white, and then red. She was not ashamed, but furious. How dare the servants in her courtyard steal this kind of thing? Moreover, they fell in front of and great elder princess. Wasn't it obvious that they wanted to stir up trouble? But now it was not the time to punish the servants. Old madam suppressed the anger in her heart and slowly showed a smile on her face. She was no longer tough, and she couldn't be tough at this time. Great elder princess, don't worry. I will find out this matter and definitely give you an explanation. 3 days, I only need 3 days to reorganize it. When I finish, I will ask great elder princess to come over. Old madam had to give in and give a deadline. This time was different from the past. There was a real hammer, and old madam couldn't avoid it. That's better. I will visit you 3 days later. Now I'm going to see Joie. Great elder princess didn't want to see old madam's fake face anymore, so she stood up coldly. Send great elder princess out. Old madam ordered tiredly. Great elder princess glanced at her coldly, turned around, and followed the old maid who led the way out. In the room, old madam said to Nanny Yu, search the whole courtyard to see if there is anyone with dirty hands. After finding them, sell them immediately. She thought that all the servants in the courtyard belonged to her and were loyal to her. She didn't expect that such a thing would happen, so that she was in a passive position now. Yes, old madam, I will check it right away. But what about Infanta Qinghua's dowry? Some of it was taken away by madam. Nanny Yu reminded old madam in embarrassment. Some of it was in old madam's hands, and some was in the hands of madam of Duke Xing, Madame Jiang. Madame Jiang was not in the mansion now, so it was unrealistic to invite her back. I will tell Jing later and ask him to find someone to check Madame Jiang's private warehouse and take out all the things in it to see if we can make up for it. If there is still something missing, we can only make up for her before we talk about other things. Old madam said sternly. Madame Jiang had been in charge of Duke Xing's mansion for a long time. She must have some money in her hands for so many years, so she could use it to make up for it first. Nanny Yu looked at old madam and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. In the end, she bowed her head and left without saying anything. Although second Madame Jiang was not kind, what would first miss and first young master do if all her private warehouse was divided? Of course, as a servant, she should not kiss these things. When great elder princess arrived at the Piaoyun courtyard, Xiao Wanru had already received the news and was waiting at the gate of the courtyard. Seeing Rick and great elder princess coming over, she came up with a smile on her fair face, bowed sideways to Wu and great elder princess respectfully, and said in a sweet voice, "Grandma." Seeing her little granddaughter and thinking of the evil appearance of old madam of Duke Xing's mansion, great elder princess felt pity, pain, and regret. If she had insisted on not agreeing at that time, her daughter would have been fine, and her granddaughter would have experienced hardships. She reached out to take Xiao Wanru's hand and led her to the courtyard. Are you used to living here? If you don't feel well, can you follow me to live in great elder princess's mansion for a few days? Grandma, don't worry. I live well. I want to go to princess's mansion to accompany you for a few days and see how, but it's not suitable for me now. Xiao Wanru said with a smile, reached out to pull great elder princess's sleeve, and pulled her to sit down with a sweet smile. She looked a bit delicate like a little girl, which made great elder princess feel more distressed. She reached out to pull Xiao Wanru to sit down beside her and said, I know it's not suitable now. After the dowry is settled, you can come over and live for a few days. After you get married, it will not be so convenient. As great elder princess spoke, her eyes turned red. The old lady, who had always been strong, remembered that her daughter had also slowly disappeared from her sight after getting married in this way. She couldn't help but feel sad and burst into tears. Xiao Wanru hurriedly comforted her, "Grandma, don't be sad. If you don't want Zhuozhuo to get married, Zhuozhuo won't get married." Her childish words made great elder princess laugh. She reached out to wipe her tears with a handkerchief and couldn't help lecturing her, "Marriage is a big deal. It's not up to you whether you get married or not. Besides, Prince Chen wants you to get married. He promised me 3 years ago." 3 years ago? Xiao Wanru tilted her head curiously. "Yes, 3 years ago. 3 years ago, the Empress Dowager had this intention. I was worried, so I went to see Chu Luchen. I'm really worried about his health. If he dies early, you will have to be a widow. The royal family won't allow you to remarry." Great elder princess sighed, took Xiao Wanru's little hand and said lovingly. Even though she was only a great elder princess and had no effect on Chu Luchen, who was favored by the Empress Dowager and the Emperor, she still went to see him. Her purpose was to see if this marriage was suitable. If it was not suitable and Chu Liuchen's health was really poor, she would not let her granddaughter marry Prince Chen even at the cost of her life. What did he say?" Xiao Wanru blushed slightly, but she couldn't help asking in a low voice. Seeing her like this, great elder princess knew that she was willing. She was sad and happy at the same time. She was sad because her daughter also had the same expression at that time. She couldn't help accepting the imperial edict, but ended up like that in the end. She was happy because she could see that they loved each other, so she was naturally happy. Her daughter was not happy, but her granddaughter must be happy. He said that he would definitely protect you and would never let you be a widow. He told me that his illness could be cured, and he asked the doctor in the mansion to come and explain it to me. Great elder princess showed a smile on her face and looked at her granddaughter gently. She also watched Chu Luchen grow up and grow into such an unruly person. He had a gentle appearance, but in fact his means and methods were very cruel. Behind his smile was a cold and ruthless heart. The whole royal family knew that he had abandoned himself to despair. If he didn't even care about himself, how could he care about others? She didn't expect that one day he would care about a woman so much. He even promised her and asked the doctor to come and explain it to her in order to collect evidence. Although great elder princess didn't understand, she could see that Chu Luchen was really much better. The doctor gave him the medicine, and he drank it in front of her without saying anything. She agreed, but asked Chu Luchen to do what he said. He should at least make his health better in 3 years, and then arrange the marriage between him and Zhuozhuo. Now that she thought about it, he did do it. Prince Chen was getting better. Although he still looked a little worse than ordinary people, she also clearly asked the imperial physicians in the palace, and they all said that if he was well treated, he should be able to live for decades without any major problems, although it was a little weak. Great elder princess originally had some concerns, but now seeing Xiao Wanru's expression, she knew that Xiao Wanru was also willing to do it. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. It was better than Qinghua. Chu Luchen was not Xiaojiang. As long as he was alive, he would definitely protect Zhuozhuo and not let anyone bully her. Great elder princess was still convinced of this. In this case, she had no reason to object. She took Xiao Wanru's hand and solemnly told her. She said, "In the future, even if Duke Xing's mansion doesn't stand on your side, Grandma will always stand behind you. If anything happens, you must turn to Grandma. Don't keep resisting even if you can't bear it, like your mother." In the end, great elder princess said as her tears fell down. Xiao Wanru also felt sad and threw herself into great elder princess's arms. A trace of hostility flashed across her slightly red eyes. In this life, she would not let great elder princess feel so distressed and desperate that she had nothing to love and become a nun. Chapter 8:11. After Xiao Jing of Duke Xing returned to the mansion, he was hurriedly called back by old madam. As soon as he entered the door, old madam asked with a livid face, "Do you know how much of Infanta Qinghua's dowry Jiang took away?" "Mother, I don't know this kind of thing." Xiao Jing frowned. The affairs of the inner courtyard were decided by Madame of Duke Xing, Jiang. He had never cared about these things in the past. Jiang is too bold. She took away more than half of it. Does she really think that these are all hers? Old Madame was so angry that she raised her eyebrows. She knew that Jiang took away some of Infanta Qinghua's things. In fact, not only Jiang took them, but she also took them. Jiang would show filial piety to her when she took some. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law understood each other. If she didn't ask, Jiang wouldn't say. What old Madame didn't expect was that the Madame of Duke Xing's mansion would deceive her and take away more than half of it without telling her. She was careful when talking about Ru and Great Elder Princess. She also hinted that with Ruan Great Elder Princess around, Infanta Qinghua's things could only be taken away slowly, but not too much. Otherwise, it would be hard to guarantee in the future. Ruan Great Elder Princess wanted to check Infanta Qinghua's dowry. Old Madame didn't expect that the Madame of Duke Xing's mansion would be so bold and keep it from her. Old Madame was so angry that the blue veins on her forehead stood out. Now that she took out these things, Ruan Great Elder Princess would never let it go. More than half of it? Xiao Jing also took a deep breath. He didn't expect Jiang to be so bold. Have you checked? Is there anything missing? I've asked the servants in your wife's room, and they said that some of them had been sent out. Some of them were burned when decorating Hua An's courtyard. The rest of them fell into your wife's hands. I also have some in my room. She didn't say that they belonged to Infanta Qinghua when she sent them to me. Madame Dowager frowned and put all the blame on the Madame of Duke Xing. Mother, let's collect everything in our mansion first. If we can't collect everything, we can make up for it with money. After so many years, some things are damaged. When Infanta Qinghua married into our mansion, she also gave some things away. We can't blame it all on us. Xiao Jing said decisively. Old Madame was very worried. It seemed that this was the only way. But after checking just now, she found that some things could not be made up even if she wanted to. Some of the items in Infanta Qinghua's dowry are listed as palace products. Xiao Jing thought for a moment and said, things made in the palace can also be burned down. The courtyard where fifth niece lived was said to have been decorated a long time ago. I thought it was the young lady of Qin's mansion, but later I found out it was not. So I burned the decorations in the courtyard. I had no choice. The layout of that courtyard was extremely gorgeous. Jiang Shi had also taken him to see it. It could be said that it was the most gorgeous courtyard in the entire Fu. Later, it was no wonder that Jiang Shi felt so distressed that she fell ill. Now, it was reasonable to say that some things made in the palace were burned there. On the day of the fire, many people in the capital saw it. Let's do it. Old Madame felt a headache. She reached out to rub between her eyebrows and said, I will paste some things in here and return all the things sent by Jiang Shi in the past. But Jiang Shi has to make up for some things herself. After all, it was her fault at that time. Let's make up for all her dowry. Mother, Huan. Xiao Jing was not very satisfied and reminded her. Jiang Shi's things were actually his children's things. Now that Ru'er has entered the Imperial Palace, it seems that she will not get better. As for Hua, you can make up for him. Jiang Shi's dowry is not much, and it was left for Ru'er before. Old Madame said with a sullen face. She had put all her hope on Xiao Yanru, but now she had no hope. She was in a bad mood at the mention of Xiao Yanru. The greater the hope before, the greater the disappointment now. Mother, Ru'er is not completely hopeless. She is now in that remote place. Maybe she is better. Xiao Jing said implicitly, she has not really been with His Majesty before. Don't you want to give up? Old Madame stared at Xiao Jing in surprise and said. Xiao Jing stood up and looked at Nanny Yu cautiously. The only outsider in the room was Nanny Yu. Nanny Yu sensibly turned around behind Old Madame, walked to the door, closed the door slightly, and guarded the door for them. The sound in the room was very low. Even if she was at the door, she could not hear it clearly, but she still heard Duke saying something to Old Madame inside. Nanny Yu sighed in her heart. She had already figured it out just now. She didn't want to know what Old Madame and Duke were talking about at all. If it was an ordinary secret, Madame Dowager would not avoid her, but it was obviously very important. The important thing was that Duke did not want others to hear it. Even if she was Madame Dowager's henchman, Duke still avoided her. Just now, Duke's cold eyes had explained everything. This reminded Nanny Yu of the last time that Duke showed such an expression and stayed in the room to talk with old Madame. It had been more than 10 years. After that, the news that heir of Duke had an accident came. Then Infanta Qinghua came back, but she was half crazy. Thinking of this, Nanny Yu's heart trembled inexplicably. She hurriedly took a few steps out to make sure that she could not hear the voice in the room. She was just a servant. Even if she was favored by old Madame, she was just a servant. Of course, a servant could not hear too much and know too much. In the room, Xiao Jing leaned over to old Madame and said in a low voice, "Mother, since Ru'er has nothing to do with His Majesty, there may be a chance in the future." The meaning of these words was clearer than what he had said just now. Old Madame was stunned and looked at him in astonishment. Her lips immediately trembled twice. If this kind of word spread out, the whole Duke Xing's mansion would be in trouble. "What nonsense are you talking about?" Old Madame calmed down and rebuked him. "Mother, I'm not talking nonsense. Think about it, both Prince Zhou and Prince Yu are good to Ru. Although something happened before and made them unhappy, this kind of thought will disappear after a period of time. The worse Ru'er lives in the palace now, the more they will care about her. In the future, no matter who it is, they will take more pity on Ru." Xiao Jing boldly thought, which made old Madame tremble all over. She said in a trembling voice, "Second brother, you will be beheaded for saying this." "Mother, it doesn't matter if I talk to you in the room. Ru'er was raised by you. You have spent so much effort on her. You can't let her go like this." Xiao Jing said disapprovingly, "Mother, I have already thought about it. As long as Ru'er stays in the palace obediently now, she still has a chance." Xiao Jing did not tell anyone about Prince Qing, including old Madame. As for what would happen next, he secretly sent someone to discuss with Xiao Yenru. He would not let go of this daughter. Except for this daughter, he could not offer any other suitable daughter. "But she is the emperor's concubine." Old Madame's face was pale with shock and she murmured. Xiao Jing's words moved her. She did raise Xiao Yenru and gave her great hope. She was going to be the granddaughter of the world. Now her granddaughter was ruined, which made her heart ache. "Mother, why are you so anxious? As long as the new emperor takes a fancy to Ru'er, and Ru'er has a pure body, then there is no need to worry about other things. Ru'er has always been smart and knows what to ask at that time. Even if the new emperor can't clear her name, she can still enter the palace with another identity. She can also enter the palace as the daughter of a branch of our family." Xiao Jing thought quickly. After thinking for a while, he came up with an idea. However, this idea was too bold. It not only schemed against the current emperor but also the future emperor. Old Madame couldn't stand it. Her cheeks trembled twice and she said, "Do you think it's possible?" In fact, old Madame had been tempted. If Ru'er really entered the mansion as a daughter of a branch of Duke Xing's mansion, she could also use the surname Xiao. It didn't matter even if she looked a little like Ru'er. After staying in the cold palace for a few years, when she came back, she said that she was a sister of the same branch and dressed differently, so no one would think that she was Ru'er. With the protection of the emperor, there would be nothing wrong. Of course it's possible. "Mother, don't worry. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou are still very polite to me now. They should have also thought of this." Xiao Jing said very confidently. "I'll do as you say, but be careful now." Old Madame was still a little worried and told him, "Mother, don't worry. I know. I'll find a way to send a message to Ru and ask her to stay in the palace obediently. Don't go to the emperor. Just be the smallest and lowest treasure forest, which is not eye-catching or hateful. She will only make people feel pity for her. No matter how angry they are, they will let her go when they see that she is so pitiful." Xiao Jing said. The reason why he was so confident was that Xiao Yenru had sent him a message before. She repeatedly said that Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were devoted to her and wanted to marry her. After the fight between Prince Zhou and Prince Yu, They were not as enthusiastic as they used to be when they saw Xiao Jing. After that, Xiao Yanru stayed in the palace, and the two princes even ignored Xiao Jing, which made Xiao Jing have a hard time in the imperial court for a period of time. Fortunately, the two princes had changed their attitude in the past 2 days and restored their enthusiasm to him. It must be because they had figured it out, which made Xiao Jing very happy. Misfortune depended on good fortune, and good fortune lurked in misfortune. After figuring it out, Xiao Jing was not so depressed. However, in front of outsiders, he still looked anxious and waited for another opportunity. The mother and son agreed that Xiao Jing would continue to pay attention to Xiao Yanru in the palace and find a way to send a message to her for later use. In the mansion, old madam would deal with Ru and great elder princess. If she could help, she would help. If she couldn't, she would refuse. She would always find a way to smooth things over. 3 days passed quickly. Early in the morning, great elder princess entered Duke Xing's mansion and met old madam, who seemed to be much calmer. One of them got her granddaughter's idea, and the other got her son's idea. Both of them felt that they could defeat each other. They calmly took a sip of tea, looked at each other, smiled coldly, and put down their cups. You had a bridge, while I had a good plan. Chapter 8:12. Great Elder Princess, this is part of Infanta Qinghua's dowry that I have sorted out. Please check it. Old madam said with a smile. Nanny Yu took out a list from her sleeve and respectfully presented it to Great Elder Princess. Great Elder Princess looked at it but did not take it immediately. She twitched the corner of her mouth and said with a sneer, Old madam, what do you mean? Why do you say it's part of the dowry? Great Elder Princess, you may not know that when Infanta Qinghua married into the mansion, she got along very well with the people in the mansion and gave a lot of things to them. Besides, during the Spring Festival, she also gave some to her relatives and friends. Naturally, these gifts don't need to be sorted out and recorded. We don't need to ask for Infanta Qinghua's favors back. Old madam said unhurriedly. There are some missing things that have been burned. When the fire broke out, Great Elder Princess also knew that it was fifth maid who lived in that courtyard. Originally, that courtyard was arranged for the first branch, and all the things in it were taken from Infanta Qinghua's private warehouse. Now it's a pity that they have been burned out. It's an accident, and no one can do anything about it. Speaking of this, old madam sighed, took the list from Nanny Yu's hand, and pushed it to Great Elder Princess on the table. Great Elder Princess, please have a look. If there are other missing things, Duke Xing's mansion is also willing to compensate. Great Elder Princess was so angry that she almost laughed. She had seen shameless people, but she had never seen such a shameless person. It was such a thin list. At first glance, she could tell that a lot of things were missing. When Qinghua married into Duke Xing's mansion, this kind of list had been made into a booklet. How could it be so thin? Old madam, I remember that when the fire broke out, Zhuozhuo was only temporarily living in that courtyard. How could she have already prepared for it? I heard that the courtyard was prepared by Madame of Duke Xing for the first young master of your mansion? Great Elder Princess sneered and did not take the list. That's just a rumor. Old Madam smiled and relieved her embarrassment. She slowly withdrew her hand and put the list in front of Great Elder Princess. One said so, and so did the other two. Old Madam, do you want me to invite several madams, who were introduced by Madame of Duke Xing that day, to come over and confirm for us whether the courtyard is prepared for the first young master of your mansion or specially prepared for Zhuozhuo, who has just been found for less than a day? Great Elder Princess sneered and said with anger on her face, Zhuozhuo only lived in there for 1 day, and an accident happened at night. First, someone framed Zhuozhuo, and then the fire suddenly broke out. If it weren't for Zhuozhuo's good luck, she would have lost her reputation and chastity at that time. I want to ask old madam why such an accident happened to Duke Xing's mansion when Zhuozhuo just came back to be recognized as her relative for so many years. This time, Great Elder Princess did not intend to give up peacefully. Duke Xing's mansion was too hateful. This time, she was ready to fall out with them. Zhuozhuo's marriage had been settled, and she was supported by Chu Luqian. Hao was still young. Even if they really fell out with each other, it would not affect him much. She slapped the table heavily with her hand, shaking the teacup on it. Old Madam was also very depressed about the fire in the courtyard. She suspected Madam of Duke Xing, but she thought that Madam of Duke Xing would not be so stupid. That was the courtyard she had carefully prepared, and it was impossible for her to burn it for Xiao Wanru's life. But if it was not Madam of Duke Xing, she could not think of anyone else. Even if she racked her brains, she could not imagine that it was Xiao Wanru who had originally made up and acted by herself in order to break the trap set by Madam of Duke Xing. The fire at that time was also an accident. Old Madam coughed in a low voice. An accident? What kind of accident can ruin a person's reputation and kill her? There are so many misses in your mansion, but you have never seen such an accident for so many years. As soon as Zhuozhuo was recognized as her relative, someone couldn't wait to kill her, ruin her reputation, and force her to the road to death. Great Elder Princess snorted coldly and said angrily. Old Madam was so angry by Great Elder Princess's attitude that her face turned pale. If it were not for this incident, Xiao Wanru would not have gone to Yue Nunnery to observe mourning for her parents, which helped her good reputation and pushed Duke Xing's mansion to the teeth of the storm. Many people secretly said that Duke Xing's mansion was not good. Thinking of these, Old Madam felt sullen. She had suffered in silence, and now she could not find out who was behind it. It was impossible for the fire to be started for no reason. It was burned like that and there was kerosene. No matter what, someone had done it on purpose. In the end, this matter helped Xiao Wanru's reputation. Old Madam had also suspected Xiao Wanru, but after thinking about it, she directly refused. How could a girl, who was only 11 years old, who had been recognized as her relative, experience such a thing and do such a thing? Moreover, even if she wanted to do it, she did not have the kerosene. When she entered the mansion, she came to accompany Qin Yuru, so it was impossible for her to prepare it in advance. Moreover, it was impossible for her to know about the matter of the Jiang family. No matter what, she was only an 11-year-old girl. It was good enough for her to listen to Bu and Great Elder Princess's advice. How could she plan so carefully? After thinking about it, there was no one else. Could it be the third branch? At that time, the third branch had suffered a great loss. What if they were jealous? But with this idea, Old Madam did not dare to investigate further. It was a scandal of her family no matter how she investigated it. If it was really the third daughter-in-law, she would expose the previous plot of the second daughter-in-law and Qin Yuru, and the third daughter-in-law was implicated. But this suspicion was also doubtful. The third daughter-in-law had never been in charge of affairs. How could she do it without anyone knowing? Moreover, she was so seriously injured at that time and was unable to arrange it. This matter was a mystery in Duke Xing's mansion. Old Madam was afraid to mention it, but now it was brought up by Great Elder Princess. She was speechless and felt very aggrieved. Old Madam, I don't care what you think. Duke Xing's mansion owes us for this matter for 3 years. Now you say that there was a fire in the courtyard and Qinghua's things were burned. Old Madam, all the good things in the world have fallen into your mansion. It was my son's branch who got into trouble, and all the benefits have fallen into your hands. If you really say so, today we will go to the palace to judge. And Great Elder Princess said sternly, Empress Dowager, please ask the madams who have been to your mansion at that time to come over and tell them what Madam of Duke Xing said at that time. Then ask why those things appeared in that courtyard. Then we will mention why Zhuozhuo has just come to your mansion, but why someone can't tolerate her and set her up again and again. The more and Great Elder Princess said, the angrier she became. Thinking of her daughter who had died early, her granddaughter who had been wandering outside, and her grandson who was almost raised to be useless, the anger rushed up in her heart. She really couldn't bear it. Her granddaughter also said that she didn't need to worry about anything at this time. She could say whatever she wanted and do whatever she wanted. Anyway, she had never been on good terms with Duke Xing's mansion, so there was no need to show mercy at this time. Seeing that and Great Elder Princess mentioned the Empress Dowager again and seemed to fall out with her, Old Madam felt weak. Duke Xing's mansion was in the wrong in this matter, and more things might be revealed. She didn't dare to really quarrel with Great Elder Princess on this matter. Great Elder Princess, don't be angry. Even for the sake of how and fifth miss, you have to bear with it. No one wants this to happen. Forget it. Duke Xing's mansion is unlucky. Can we compensate for the things inside at the original price? Old Madam softened her tone and said, compensate at the original price? Can you afford it? There are many things made in the palace. Now you want to compensate at the original price. How much is it worth? The Great Elder Princess sneered. Old Madam's face turned red. The value of the things made in the palace was certainly not comparable to that of ordinary objects. With the reputation of being made in the palace, it was not comparable to that of ordinary people. What can we do if we don't do this? No one wants to do this. We can't really hurt the faces of the two families for the sake of some property. Our mansion will only compensate them more. The fifth daughter is going to get married to Prince Qin. It's not good to have these property disputes at this time. Old Madam's words were soft but hard. She talked about Xiao Wenru's marriage. Great Elder Princess sneered. These were the words that Zhuozhuo had expected. As expected, she brought them up. Fortunately, she had prepared for it. It is the Empress Dowager's order that Zhuozhuo will marry Prince Qin. If Old Madam thinks that the Empress Dowager will not blame your Duke Xing's mansion, then you can ruin this marriage. At most, you won't raise Zhuozhuo, but I will. Great Elder Princess said. This was almost a slap in the face, and it was a slap in the face of Duke Xing's mansion. Everyone knew that Duke Xing's mansion had a hard time recently. With the Empress Dowager's marriage, Duke Xing's mansion had the hope to recover. At this time, Old Madam did not want anything to go wrong with the marriage more than Ru and Great Elder Princess. Great Elder Princess, what do you think we should do? The things made in the palace have been burned. We can't find the same things again. Old Madam was angry and resentful. She clenched her hands, but she had to soften her attitude first. Ru and Great Elder Princess also knew that it was time to stop. She sat down with a cold snort and told Nanny Gao beside her, take out the things we brought. Nanny Gao nodded and also took out a list from her sleeve. Old Madam took it and saw the rules on it. She was angry, but now she was in a weak position and had to agree. According to the compensation terms on the list of Great Elder Princess, Duke Xing's mansion would lose at least 20% or 30%. It was just a daughter who got married, but the whole mansion had lost so much. Old Madam's heart was bleeding, but she had to agree with Great Elder Princess because of her sore point. After Great Elder Princess and Old Madam negotiated, she specially went to the Piaoyun courtyard. Seeing Great Elder Princess coming in with a smile, Xiao Wenru knew that her grandma had completely defeated Old Madam this time. She came out with a smile and said, "Grandma, come in and talk." Great Elder Princess smiled and said to Xiao Wenru in a good mood, "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."